would you please lead us in the pledge?
Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call roll? Tonight's roll call: Wells.
Here.
Hosega.
Here.
DeMoss. Here. Finch.
Here.
Barnwell.
Here.
Calhoun.
Here.
Mayor McClure.
And here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. We're now to citizen comments on any subject except those items scheduled for public hearing. There's quite a number scheduled for public hearing. If you've signed in, you'll be given the first opportunity. You'll have 3 minutes. And then after that, I can take people by raising their hands. We have a 36-minute total time for this. And when you come up to speak, there's a chair there and a microphone, and we'll need your name and if you live inside or outside the city limits. Madam Clerk.
Yes, ma'am. We have several people signed in, and the first is Karen Corrigan.
Okay.
Karen Corrigan, inside city limits. I must preface this by stating that what I'm about to say is my opinion as a citizen of Seward, and not a reflection or the opinion of the city of Seward, my department, or my position. These are my thoughts and opinions alone. I am against Resolution 2023-54. Contracting out our utility billing service to an online-only service is not acceptable for when citizens have questions about billing. This is a slippery slope to go down. I am also against Resolution 2023-52 for contract work on Fort Raymond Substation. I feel this resolution should be pulled from the agenda altogether tonight. I am very concerned as a citizen that the resolution for an over $3.5 million contract is 1, on consent with no discussion. 2, has absolutely no informative backup attached as to what council would be agreeing to. There is no contract, there is no bid submission, only the bid request without the appendices. The citizens and the council have no idea what is in this contract, nor do we know why it is costing over $3.5 million. That is a lot of taxpayer money going out the door with no planned discussion. Council should remove this item from the agenda until it can be presented with the proper paperwork for citizen and council review. Even if a laydown is provided tonight, it does not allow proper review from anyone here. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Next signed in is Bruce Jaffa.
Okay, Bruce.
Good evening, Bruce Jaffa, outside the city limits, mayor, administration, council. Our city government has been turbulent for 5 years with personnel changes and possibly capped by an expensive audit to prove fiduciary responsibility. The last 6 months have brought a renewed public focus on management considerations of sewer agencies and departments. It is clear to me that employee recruitment and retention are currently insufficient to operate on a professional and necessary level. The council's decision and promotion to sell the electric utility and the need to bond, borrow, and lobby for utility maintenance and improvements for most departments very clearly points to the deficiency in planning. The harbor appears to be the significant department that generates and protects sufficient revenue to keep up with costs. Remember, the city acquired the harbor from the state, a reverse of outsourcing. We all know the government's not a business. A public body, with the consent of the governed, often spends money for purposes not strictly measured by return of investment. With the agreement to pay for government in the form of taxes and fees, the people expect the best decisions and use of their money. I do believe that with few exceptions, our elected officials and public employees who also believe and work toward that goal. Why do I say any of this? It seems obvious, because our next city administration and council must pay serious attention to the issues that have been taken too casually. We are underfunding critical needs while paying attention to such things as phone call policy. How important are local jobs? Across the country, the economic loss of earning power by the middle class of American workers poses the greatest threat to our democracy. Concerned by worker retention, a more stable work environment demonstrated by consistent management and benefit packages are what influence job seekers. Seward must offer wage rates, but also a stable future to attract and maintain the best and brightest. While we properly dream of projects and buildings, we must remember to maintain what we have both in property and personnel. This works best when done locally. The current wage studies and personal policy issues are hardly encouraging. The fast-track action of the consent agenda documents resolutions 2023, 054, 055, 058, 060, 061, and ordinances 2023, 010, 011, 012, 013, and 014 should be tabled and brought back with a new permanent leader-manager in place. Finally, outsourcing jobs is counterproductive to the vitality of our community. We must not join a race to the bottom. Remove Resolution 2023-004 from the consent agenda and vote against outsourcing billing and find another way.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk?
Madam Mayor, next signed in is Brad Janorski.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, City Administration. Just,
We need your name.
sorry, Brad Janorski, General Manager, Homer Electric Association, outside the city limits. And good evening. Just to follow up from the election, as you can imagine, I'm disappointed, but on the same token, greatly appreciate the council's support, city administration support, and the electric utility support during our efforts to communicate with the Seward residents. So through that support and my staff that spent a lot of time over here, it's interesting having conversations with them because none of them feel it was wasted, and neither do I. I think our goal, and I told some of you from the get-go, is to underpromise and overperform. And personally, my objective was to make sure in 3 years, both the Seward residents and the city council would say, dang, that was a good decision. So we didn't get this opportunity this time, but as usual, I suspected, in fact, I was telling Bruce before the meeting, we are in a very dynamic time in the electric utility industry. I've been in this industry for over 3 decades. I would have never guessed it would be as dynamic as it is today with all the new technologies. So with that, moving forward, as usual, if any of you or your electric department or city administration needs anything from Home Electric, just give us a call and we'll help you out. So, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Next signed in is Katie Cornwell.
Hi, my name is Katie Cornwell, Inside City. I'm the Executive Director of the Seward Prevention Coalition, and I'll try to make it brief, because it seems like you have a lot of people on the list today. I just wanted to come in and just give you a little bit of information on the consent agenda, item 2023-53? Yes. And so most of you, if you don't know about the Seward Prevention Coalition, we run a lot of programming in the community, Sources of Strength, U360, Bloom, our local DBSA program, Safe Harbor. And so we have this opportunity through the Alaska Health and Equitable Communities Grant to partner with the city to utilize funding that was allocated for post-COVID dollars to address things like mental health, suicide prevention, kind of a plethora of options. But our coalition recently did a survey of our youth, and that survey came back that 74% of the females, of teenagers in our population feel like they have low mental health or poor mental health. And this is a trend that we're seeing nationally, and a lot of it is, and they even attribute to it after we had conversations with them, they attribute it to post-COVID kind of response, like what they went through during COVID and then trying to reconnect with the community. And so we are going to use these funds that have been pretty much already allocated to the community through the state to address youth mental health with a campaign in partnership with Montana State University that's centered around destigmatizing youth mental health, as well as some suicide prevention work and increasing healthy activities for our youth. And that's our plan for those funds. And I just want to thank the city for being just really amazing with working with us and being able to to partner on this and bring these funds into our community so we can put them to good use. So, thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Next signed in is Tim McDonald.
Tim?
Tim McDonald, inside city limits. I was having a hard time hearing that last speaker just because it was so low. Maybe my hearing's going, I don't know. Either that or the mic's not close enough. Can everybody hear? Sound check? Okay. Tim McDonald, inside the city. I think we have so many things to think about in this town. I think we need to stay on point about the utility and the sale and the failed. I really think, you know, we're split up right down the middle, and you know, we're just like the whole country. We're a little teeny grain of sand, and they're a dump truck of sand, but we're exactly the same as the rest of them, split right down the middle on everything. And you know, Seward is a small community, a village, and we have a lot of opportunity right now to do things that bigger entities, cities or whatever can't do. You know, of course, everybody knows I'm a proponent of alternative energy and stuff, and you know, I really like Homer, man. You know, what a nice guy, and laid it out. I think they have the very best of intentions, but you know, the problem with the thing is the transmission lines and things like that. You know, we need to generate it ourselves, and without those vulnerabilities, you know, we have enough as it is. And the other thing that, you know, it goes right along with it, and all this being divided, is we're a house divided. You know, we don't have any voters. We had 350 voters this time, whatever. I didn't vote. I don't consider us a, you know, an entity, because we're divided, man. I mean, there's more people outside the city than there's inside the city, and the minority was voting on something that affected the majority more than them. You know, there's more households, there's more people outside the city limits, and you know, I really think we need a hard mayor system. You know, this just isn't working. It's getting out of control. You can see what everybody is. I'm hopping mad at the city, to tell you the truth, from my things last summer, and considering suing you guys. I'm trying my best not to, but everything was done so strangely and rudely and unprofessionally. I just don't really have much choice. But anyway, I think we need a revamped system of government. I think a hard mayor system where our intrepid mayor would be the city manager, and we don't have to worry about turnover. She's as solid as a rock. You know, other than that, we stick with the 2-year average turnover, and it does us no good. We might as well not even have a city manager. It's been that long getting familiar, you know.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Anyway,
Thank you, Tim.
that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Next signed in is Christy Jordan.
And Elias.
And Elias Jordan. They want to come together.
So hi, we're here. Elias has been doing an independent study in government, and we've been focusing on local government, and this is sort of part of his final and how it affects him and us.
Ma'am,
and
we need your names.
Oh, sorry.
Inside or outside.
Sorry. Christy Jordan,
Just
Elias
for the
Jordan, outside city
Thank
limits,
you.
Lowell Point.
Thank you.
And we wanted to come tonight. I wanted to thank you on behalf of the hard work that you do. It's not easy being a local government in a small town that can be divided. And yet you're willing to have the hard conversations, and you're willing to represent us. And you also signed the resolution to increase the BSA for schools. As a parent and as an educator, that's super important. And when you add what Katie Cornwell just shared about girls' mental health, if we had more arts in the schools, I think that would help. And now I'm going to pass it over to Elias, who has something he would like to say.
Okay.
Okay.
Do I have to say my name again?
Sure.
Elias Jordan, outside city limits. I want to thank you for, I think this has been 1 year, I think today is the 1 year anniversary of the Low Point landslide.
And what do you want to thank him for?
Thank you for making the clean. Thank you for making the, yeah. Thank for getting the road to where, back to where we could drive on it.
It's pretty important, huh?
Yeah. We're hoping something like that doesn't happen again.
All right, anything else you want to say while you have them? Or are you done?
I'm done.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk?
Last signed in is Linda Paquette. Linda?
Linda Paquette, outside city limits. And I love that the clock has been leveled. Whoever is responsible, thank you. So the election. After the election, I talked to a lot of people, and I asked them why they weren't happy with Homer Electric. What was the problem? And so we're not really split 50-50. This is, I think, an important point. This particular election needed a 60-40 split, and we only lost by 6 or 7 votes. That's important to note. And you guys have an election coming up in the fall, a regular one that's on the calendar. Based on the feedback that I was given, because what I said was, look, you know, you have council and you have administration, and they evaluated the 2 offers, and they picked what they believed was the better one. And this hurts me to say, and I hope you don't take it personally the way it sounds, but what each of those people said to me, and there were a number of them, was, I don't trust their judgment. And in each of those cases, they would have voted yes had the vendor been Chugach. The perception in their mind that because Chugach is so much bigger, it was obvious to them that that was the better way, even if the offer wasn't as appealing. So I don't know what your thoughts are about moving forward. I don't know if it makes sense to try and, you know, put the finishing touches on the Chugach offer and put that back out to a vote. I don't know if you put them both on the ballot and put it back out to the vote. I don't know how you get 60% in that case. But I do know from what I've talked to with the electric department that we can't just say, oh, okay, the sale didn't go through and we'll just keep doing what we're doing, because that's not heading in the best of directions ultimately. So something has to happen, and I hope that you're just considering as many options as would be legally possible to try and bring a vote back in some fashion. Thank you. And I also hope that you will appoint Thomas Miller for the 2026 seat, because we're about to go on hiatus. So if you put him in the 2023 seat, he can come to the May workshop, and that would be it. So thank you.
Good point. Madam Clerk?
No one else has signed in.
Okay, is there anyone out there? Come on up.
Hi, I'm Thomas Miller, outside of city limits, and I just came to say thank you for voting me onto or bringing me onto the PACAB board. I'm really curious to see everything and hear everything, and you know, I think the port is the heart of this city, and you know, we wouldn't be a city without it. So it's really important that it gets due attention, and you know, thank you. Anyways, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Come on.
Christine Casagranda in City Limits. I'm here to speak on behalf of Resolution 2023-054. It is a resolution to outsource the billing. I've done some due diligence on my own. The company is from Canada, although it sounds like it is a proposal for it to be outsourced with the same accounting software that we have today, that in the event we needed to bring it back in-house, we could. We had a forensic audit a couple years ago, and council decided not to do anything with the forensic audit other than to just let people try to figure out how to read their bills and if they could find any faults in their bills or refunds, or if they're paying too much, to report it back to the city, and the city would refund the misbillings. I am aware of a company here in the state of Alaska that is willing to do a utility audit for the city of Seward to get everything straight before you guys go outsource. So I am a supporter of outsourcing the billing, but I think that it's time. We made resolutions, we gave administration direction that I felt was very clear to audit the utility, to go to every building, to find the meter, to find what they were being charged, and it's come to my attention that that is not complete, and there's still people that are being underbilled and overbilled. And it would be my recommendation to potentially hire an outside consultant to come and do a one-time over of your utility billing prior to outsourcing it or simultaneous to outsourcing it. I do not believe that an outside agency would have the knowledge or the capability that maybe some local people may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Last chance. Okay, seeing none, I'll close this portion. And we're now down to approval of the agenda and the consent agenda. I need a motion and a second, please.
I'll move to approve the agenda and the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Changes and discussion. I'll get Councilmember Calhoun first.
Yeah, I would like to pull resolution 2023-052 from the consent agenda.
Okay.
And I would like to pull resolution 2023-054 from the consent agenda.
Okay. Councilmember DeMoss, that covered you. Okay. Councilmember Wells.
I'd like to pull resolution 2023-055 from the consent agenda for discussion.
Okay. Other changes? And I'll try to do this right this time. These will appear under new business, item 10, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I'll get that taken care of. Any other changes? Okay, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to vote.
Voting on tonight's agenda and consent agenda as amended. Calhoun,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
DeMoss,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Your agenda and consent agenda are approved. Approved on tonight's consent agenda are the April 24th, 2023 City Council Special Meeting Minutes, the April 24th, 2023 City Council Regular Meeting Minutes, and the April 27th, 2023 City Council Special Meeting Minutes. You've approved Resolution 2023-051, authorizing the city manager to purchase a new electric control panel in a not-to-exceed amount of $158,450, including shipping. You have approved Resolution 2023-053, approving the memorandum of agreement to serve as a pass-through agency for Sewer Prevention Coalition for the State of Alaska Healthy and Equitable Communities Grant, and submission of the grant application by Sewer Prevention Coalition. You have approved Resolution 2023-056, approving an employment agreement between the City of Seward and Chris Peck for city clerk services. Resolution 2023-057, clarifying intended uses for the ARPA Local Government Lost Revenue Relief Program from the Alaska Department of Commerce, Community and Economic Development to offset significant revenue loss due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. You have approved Resolution 2023-058, adopting personnel policy number 2023-01, phone use and recording policy. Resolution 2023-059, adopting personnel policy number 2023-02, training expense policy. Resolution 2023-060, adopting personnel policy number 2023-03, travel reimbursement and vehicle use policy. And you've approved Resolution 2023-061, adopting personnel policy number 2023-04, field training officer premium pay policy. And finally, you have certified the results of the May 2nd, 2023 City of Seward special municipal election.
Thank you. We're now down to proclamations and awards, and I have a proclamation for National Safe Boating Week. And we have, in the audience, I see some boating types. We have U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliaries, Phil Schneering.
You pronounced it correctly.
Yay. You want to come up here, and both of you, if you would, or if there's more of you, and I will read it from up here. And I'm glad I pronounced it correctly.
You did.
Okay, this is it. Whereas weather and sea conditions in Alaska waters present dangers year-round, making boating activity risky for the unprepared, as well as individuals who are uneducated on the proper safety precautions necessary for safe boating. And whereas on average 650 people die each year in boating-related accidents in the United States, approximately 80% of these are fatalities caused by drowning. And whereas the vast majority of these accidents are caused by human error or poor judgment and not by the boat, equipment, or environmental factors, and whereas a significant number of boaters who lose their lives by drowning each year would be alive today had they seen the Kids Don't Float boards posted at the top of each ramp in the harbor and had worn their life jackets. And whereas it is recommended that individuals wear life jackets and use their marine radios, as well as be aware of the safety programs offered in Seward, such as the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliaries free vessel exams performed by the Seward Flotilla. Now, therefore, I, Sue McClure, Mayor of the City of Seward, Alaska, do hereby proclaim the week of May 20th to 26th, 2023 as National Safe Boating Week, and encourage everyone to become educated on the proper safety precautions necessary for safe boating and do their best to implement them. Signed this day, 8th day of May 2023. And I'll give you this, and would you like to say a few words to people about safe boating or anything you want to talk about?
I would. I think we both will have brief comments.
Yeah, do.
If I turn this way.
Yeah, that would be good.
We're good.
We're good. No, that's how we were configured.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just we thank you very much for this recognition, and we take it upon ourselves to do what we can to make boating in particular safer for all of our citizens. I think all of us are familiar with the response part of the Coast Guard, and in particular the Mustang. And we're so glad that Lieutenant Troyes is here with us. Frankly, the auxiliary, we hope to put them out of business. Not literally. We know they're important to the city, but a lot of the auxiliary's job is in the prevention area, and that's largely through public education, and specifically education in safe boating techniques. So we thank the city very much for this, and we promise to continue our work.
Okay, thank you very much. Did you have something?
I just wanted, I don't have anything prepared or anything like that, but I just wanted to extend my gratitude and support to Phil and our other flotilla members here in Seward. We have an excellent partnership with them. We've got some training coming up this weekend that we'll be running. And like he said, they kind of do their best to prevent everything that they can, but I mean, can't control the weather, and sometimes accidents happen, so that's why we're here. And I really can't thank Phil and Sue and the other members enough for being, great partners and preventing any sort of unnecessary mishaps out there and in educating voter safety. So we appreciate y'all.
Well, thank you. And I know that Sue Lang, if you know who Sue Lang, is very active with the auxiliary, and she's out of state, I understand.
She is, yeah.
She would be here.
She
I know
would.
this.
She would indeed. I'm just a stand-in.
You're the stand-in. I just wanted folks to know that because, yeah, she's, anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, city manager report. We find that on, starting on page 4.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a written statement in the packet, but I just wanted to comment and to thank the council, both the current council and the council that was sitting when I was hired for bringing me to Seward. And my thought is that probably the future city manager would be watching this, and I want to say to that person that Seward's a great place. And as a council, you're a great council, and it's a great community. I love to hear when the audience comes with diverse thoughts and opinions, and it's a great community. And I do think about a year ago, my first time with Miller's Landing, and all that they did to help during the landslide, and how the community came together during that time frame. And I think that's Seward. It's ingrained in Seward to come together. So thank you for my time here, and to the next city manager, it's a great place to be. And if you have any questions about the rest of that.
Questions for the city manager or comments? I'm going to reiterate a comment because I'm still getting bugged about the fact that we still have Christmas decorations up. I know the lot is going on, and but the people are clamoring at this point. And any questions at all other than, yeah.
I also have comments about the Christmas decorations. I hate to even bring it up because I was one of the ones that wanted them up so badly. So I have been hesitant to ask you to take them down. But is there a reason there's a hang up, or are we going to get it done?
It's going to be done, and the hang-up has really been staffing issue, but that's really been the issue, is the staffing to get it done, but it will get done.
Thank you. I've been using that. Other questions? Was that a hand? No. Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the city clerk report, which, if I can read this right, is page 62. Did you want to have a verbal?
I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay.
Pretty brief this week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so, city attorney report, which you can find on page 63 of the packet. Mr. City Attorney.
Good evening, everyone. Hearing that proclamation made me realize I should have, when I introduced Cody George to you when I was down here last, he's a member of the Coast Guard Reserve and currently away for his annual training down in Washington State right now. He'll be pleased to know of your proclamation. Past month, relatively busy, a lot of focus on personnel matters. There's an active arbitration, a lot of these rules, which had sort of been existing, but it was unclear if they had ever officially been adopted. So they were reviewed. There's a number of ordinances on the agenda this evening that are the product not just of last month, but of previous months of work that have made their way up to the top. We had the sort of a usual number of public records requests to help out with, provided some advice on the Breeze Inn lease situation, and worked on some changes to an operating agreement with Providence. And I'm not sure if that's something that will be on a future agenda or not, but I think it will be.
Sounds like it.
There was some enforcement advice given to planning, and we were able to resolve one matter that had to do with short-term rental use. So, you know, the system, I'll just tell you, the enforcement system on planning and zoning, in my experience and here in Seward, is it works. You know, it takes some effort, and our involvement in it is pretty much on par with the planning department, which is, you know, we're not out to collect penalties or things like that. We're just out to ensure compliance with the policies that have been set by the council for how property is to be used in the city. And in most instances, when we do get involved, these things are getting resolved, short of marching off into court. So the system is kind of working when it comes to that. It takes a while to get there, but it does seem to work. And we did have to file one lawsuit against somebody that's operating in violation of the short-term rental code. And I think that will be resolved fairly shortly. But that is an active matter right now. And finally, I'd just like to thank Jeanette. It's been a pleasure for our office to work with her here and help accomplish the mission and the agenda. So best of luck as you move. Is it up the road or down the road? Around the road, okay. And I'll take questions. Any questions?
Are there questions for Brooks? No questions? Thank you. Thank you for your work and good report. Okay, other reports. Port and Commerce Advisory Board report by Chair Bruce Jaffa. It says it will be a verbal report.
Well, I don't know what else it could be, as long as you dance.
That's a possibility.
Well, you want to show
No, that's okay.
Okay. I just was watching The Greatest Showman. I could probably do something from there. It's been my pleasure to serve on the Port and Commerce Advisory Board. It's one of the few organizations in the city that allows non-residents to participate and add to our city. It's not to suggest that I don't have a vested interest. We have our statewide corporate offices here in Seward, and we have properties and do business here in a variety of ways. But with PACAB, I was a proud member of the board while we went through a series of chairs, including former Mayor Chrissy Terry, Laura Snyder, and others who set a great example. I declined the board the chairmanship a few years ago. I did miss a meeting and was reelected. So caution about missing meetings, I guess. Over the last 6 months, PACAB's had 6 members. An open seat has been there since our past chair, Brandy Homedale, resigned for personal reasons. One of our long-time board members, Carl Hughes, has resigned effective this summer. I and the board will miss his views and participation. He's been there 5 or 6 years. Carl, I think you know, has an active business here in Seward. His family is well-rooted here, and he's made a great contribution to PACAB and the city. The addition of a new member, hopefully you'll approve the appointment of the applicant, will bring us to the normal 7, but with Carl resigning, we'll be back to 6, which will be advertised this summer. And I do know some people who are interested, so hopefully we can get a full board by fall. And of course, we're available during our hiatus for any special meetings or any particular purpose council would like us to do. Even with only 6 members, we've had a quorum at all of our meetings. And I know other boards have been challenged to meet their quorum requirements. That's not been the case with PACAB, although it sometimes requires some phone calling. But we've made it. Over that time, we've reviewed the harbor and the small Seward Marine Industrial Center plans, made comments and recommendations for development operations. This is pretty generic. I'd be welcome to take any questions, but we find that the boat harbor and the SMIC have been well run, have good plans for the future. If there's a problem, it's the success. We all remember, or maybe we don't, when Dale Lindsay traded land over there so that Spring Creek, 4th of July Creek could be moved to allow the development. And since then, there have been a lot of players in town, Frank Ditcraft, who put the road in ahead of the money, and a lot of other things that got us to where we are. The success means that we need to keep building, and land availability, I think the city has looked at land that's around there and has, I think, people that are already lined up looking for it. So we've been, as PACAB, we've been slightly involved with that, although that's primarily a P&Z issue. We've discussed utility needs, housing, climate, renewable energy, fish populations, and bycatch. If you see recent articles, the high seas bycatch has become a hot topic for Representative Patola, properly so, and it's we have had participants in the fishing industry in Seward come to our board and present essentially the devastation that the trawlers are having on everybody. The commercial charter boats to the resident longliners and fishing boats out of Seward. So that's an important topic, and the PACAB will continue looking at what can be offered about bycatch. We've monitored and clarified freight cruise ship dockings and the impact of finances and services on the city. The freight dock, one of our members, Dwayne Atwood, is took Christie's job at the railroad and regularly reports, I think, to council as well. The freight is doing well. I encourage the rail being used over the highway for other reasons, but both are being used. And there's a lot of freight being moved through Seward, as well as opportunities for commercial operations like Catalyst and the development of a new, or potentially new cruise ship dock. I think there's 90 dockings this year, so we also look at that a little bit with PACAB, and the potential of increased activity there. My concern was that with Whittier's development, active development for cruise lines, how that would impact Seward, and it appears there's room for both. That doesn't mean we should rest on our laurels, and PACAB will continue to look at what can be done to help that along the way. We also get regular briefings from Chamber, which is active with those organizations. We invited Homer Electric to present on renewable and net metering initiatives, which is part of the PACAB's goal, is to look at alternative energy and encourage things like the heat pump rebate program, the net zero meters, which have both been looked at seriously. The net metering has been implemented, but the heat pump rebate program is still out there. We spent an inordinate amount of time, in my opinion, on the code revisions. Mostly these are the position of a text or grammar, punctuation. I was just looking at a ordinance that'll come up. It's the definition of a dog. That's what you're spending time on. What's the definition of a dog? It's a canine mammal. It's not a dog anymore. It's a canine mammal. So I think PACAB has spent time on language and grammar that probably didn't need to be spent, in my opinion. Some of this before you on tonight's agenda. We've tried twice since December to return 2 listed priorities that were deleted by the administration for some reason. Maybe I think the thought was we didn't have time to take care of everything. They are part of PACAB's mission as specified in code, and we've returned a resolution to council to restore those 2. I can't tell you off the top of my head what they are because we have a few, but I encourage you to look at those when they come to you. These items were in fact PACAB's mission, and with that I think that we've been busy. I think we've offered something of value. We're a good sounding board. I know these things are broadcast. I'm not sure I like that, but we do make the opportunity or provide the opportunity for people to come and talk to us about a variety of topics that we can then bring to you. And we serve at your pleasure, and anything that you would like us to get into, we have a broad enough mission that includes quality of life that we can take on a variety of things. Not do your job, you know, we're just the back room talkers. Okay, that it? You happy? Our board member Paquette is here also. I don't know if she has anything to say, but I think we do have a joint meeting with you on the 22nd of May I got too many dates in my head in different meetings and I do appreciate the work you guys do. I think some of this stuff I just mentioned is one of the things that lengthens your agenda out to 400 and 500 pages. You know, that the word dog seemed sufficient to me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we've taken some resolutions from the consent agenda and moved them to later in the procedure tonight. So we're at the public hearing point, and I don't know that anyone needs a break yet. I don't see any. Okay, so we're going to move into public hearings, and we have 5 ordinances for enactment in public hearing. And so we'll begin. The first is Ordinance 2023-010. Madam Clerk, would you please read that?
Ordinance 2023-010 is amending Seward City Code Title 9, Health and Safety for the City of Seward Recodification Project. This ordinance was introduced on April 24th, 2023, and is coming tonight for public hearing and enactment.
Okay, thank you. I'd need a motion and a second to enact.
I move to enact ordinance 2023-010.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to enact ordinance 2023-010. Administration, do you want to speak to this before the public hearing?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's actually the clerk's comment.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do you want to say anything before we get started?
Yes, ma'am. I will point out that in the packet, there had been provided a body of work from the city attorney with some feedback. And there is a laydown on the dais for you and for the public. It's up on the little table over there because we ran out of room. It's a 2-page laydown for Title IX, and there's a series of amendments that are being recommended from the city attorney for council's consideration. And the way this is laid out is if you agree with the amendment, then you would just say, read across the line on page 213 under section blah, 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 and then read the statement in the 3rd column. And that embodies the recommendation of the amendment. Of course, if you don't agree, don't make the motion. But making the motion would at least put it on the floor for discussion.
Okay, and I might ask you a question when we get to that point.
Okay.
Other administrative comments? Okay, I'll open the public hearing then for ordinance 2023-010. And in terms of public hearings, actually, that's not written here tonight, but you would have 5 minutes, well, there's a sign up. If you've signed up, you get to speak first, and you get 5 minutes to speak. And then if you didn't sign up, I can take hands. So.
We have one person signed up, as Bruce Jaffa.
Bruce, do you want to speak to this? And we need your name and the whole thing again.
Will do. Bruce Jaffa, outside the city limits, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. I did sign up for speaking on this one resolution, and the comments that I'm going to make in a general sense for this resolution apply to the rest of those that you pulled from the consent agenda. Again, I think you're spending a lot of time, and certainly it's your time to spend, but I don't know why all this stuff is coming to you at sort of this last minute, unless it's an attempt to leave an imprint. None of this stuff is pressing. For instance, in Ordinance 010, 010, a dog. Previously, it said any dog, whether male, unspayed, or spayed female dog. Now it says a domestic mammal of the family Canidae and the order Carnivora, Canis lupus familiaris. That's clear, right? That makes a lot of sense. I think we all know what a dog is. Could have stayed that way. Firearm means a weapon including a pistol, revolver, rifle, or shotgun designed for discharging a shot capable of causing death or serious injury. Also could be used for putting a hole in a target or scaring off a predator. I don't understand why you're even bothering with this stuff. I don't have a specific reason that you shouldn't pass it, but I cannot let this go without saying you're wasting your time and our time.
Okay, thank you. And no other signed up?
No, ma'am.
Okay, does anyone else want to speak to this particular ordinance? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. We do have this list of amendments. Does anybody want to present those amendments? Or I will. Okay, shall we begin? Is there any discussion before I begin with that? Councilmember Kellner.
Mayor, I would just have one question for the clerk, probably. Is it possible just to do this en masse, one motion?
It's acceptable for me to do that. Would there be any concern about that? Because it's as en masse as the laydown as presented?
Correct.
Yeah, there would be if there were people that didn't agree on all of the proposed changes, because then it becomes somewhat difficult to amend the amendment to change this or change that. There is a mechanism to do it. It would take another meeting whereby our office would incorporate all of the changes into a substitute ordinance, and you would then amend this ordinance to replace it with the substitute ordinance, which would have all of these changes on it.
So you could postpone the enactment to May 22nd.
Councilmember Calhoun.
Okay, so there's not a mechanism to just make one motion for these changes to be incorporated without going through each one of them individually.
That's right.
Okay. And you want me to be the one? Okay, so, but I could, it was suggested that if we have agreement on all of them, I could just read them all and we could vote once. That's what you were saying, right?
Right.
But
That is what the attorney
this would be
said.
with the assumption that we are all in agreement on the amendments. If I could get that, I would just read the whole thing. I'm seeing nods.
Well,
No, Councilmember Wells.
yes, so we're speaking to the, all the amendments for 23-010, correct?
Not the outstanding items, but yeah, all those amendments. Or I'll just begin and really.
Well, so my only,
No.
Mr. Jaffa brought up a really good point when he brought up a whole bunch of good points, but the definition of firearm. If we're gonna get so involved, why is it only talk about an item used for killing and not target practice? So I would not vote to change it that way, personally. I couldn't support that.
Okay, but that's not one of the amendments. Right?
It's in the ordinance.
Yeah, it's in the ordinance itself. So there's this list of amendments that have been suggested, and so we could deal with those first and then discuss the changes?
The ones that are on here, I have no issue with.
Okay. Okay, so is it agreed that we could just do them en masse, and I'll just read them through as a motion and we'll get a second too? Okay, so I will move these following amendments, but I need a second first.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and here are the amendments. And you've got the list, you can look at the pages. Okay, these amendments I move. In Title 9.05.130B, strike B per city attorney because A was deleted. Title 9.05.150, strike, end quote, any bail schedule associated therewith, end quote. Title 9.15.111F, add new number 2, which reads, quote, Chapter 1, Administration of the IFC, Section 103.1, creation of agency is revised to read, quote, the Seward Fire Chief and Building Inspector shall be known as the fire code official responsible for the implementation, administration, and enforcement of the provisions of this code, and Add a new number 3, which reads, quote, Chapter 1 of the IFC, Section 104.7 is deleted, end quote. And renumber all following numbers accordingly. Title 9.15.111F. Add a new number 8, which reads, quote, Chapter 1 Administration of the IFC, Section 105.6.24, Temporary Membrane Structures, Tents, and Canopies, is revised by adding the following phrase after, quote, in excess of 400 square feet, 37 square miles, end quote. There is a mandatory 90-day period between the date an operational permit expires and the date a substantially similar operational permit under Section 105.5.1.49 of the IFC or construction permit under this section can be issued. Temporary membrane structures, tents, and canopies must be taken down during this period. Whether a permit is substantially similar is determined by the fire code official based on factors such as location, size, and use, end quote, and renumber all following numbers accordingly. We're getting there. Title 9.15.111F. Under the newly renumbered number 11, add the words, quote, is guilty of a Class B misdemeanor, end quote, in the last sentence so it reads, quote, shall be in violation of SCC 9.15 and AS 18.70.100, is guilty of a Class B misdemeanor and punishment shall be as set forth in AS 12.55, end quote. Title 9.15.111F. Under the newly renumbered number 12, add the words, quote, is guilty of a Class B misdemeanor, end quote, in the last sentence so it reads, quote, shall be in violation of SCC 9.15 and AS 18.70.100, is guilty of a Class B misdemeanor and punishment shall be set forth in AS 12.55. Title 9.15.111F. Under the newly renumbered number 39, add the words, quote, simplified seismic factor, end quote, to the last sentence so it reads, quote, fire sprinkler systems shall have a minimum seismic design coefficient, CP, simplified seismic factor of 0.72 or greater, end quote. And finally, Title 9.15.111F. Under the newly renumbered number 51, add the words, quote, new section 1009.2.2, minimizing snow and ice accumulation to read, quote, add the words, let me reread that. Add the words, quote, new section 1009.2.2, minimizing snow and ice accumulation to read, end quote, so that it reads, quote, is revised by adding a new section 1009.2.2, minimizing snow and ice accumulation to read in all occupancies, surfaces, and landings, end quote. And that's the entirety of those amendments. Is there discussion? Are we ready to vote? Okay, Madam Clerk, you don't need to read these again, do you?
No.
Okay.
Voting, and just by the way, that this laydown has been uploaded to legislative history if anyone wants to look at it. Voting on the amendment to take in all of those updates. Barnwell?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
DeMoss?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
And Mayor McClure?
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
Okay, so now it brings it back to discussion. If there are individual amendments, and then there are some discussion items here also. So did you want to bring up your, okay, Councilmember Wells.
So I have two items I would like to address. One being firearm. Means a weapon including a pistol, revolver, a rifle, or shotgun designed for discharging a shot capable of causing death or serious physical injury. I believe we all know that these items do a lot of other things than that, and so I have an issue with it stating that it was only designed for causing death or serious physical injury.
Okay, do you want to make an amendment?
I believe that it should state, means a weapon including a pistol, revolver, rifle, or shotgun that can discharge ammunition, a bullet, or pellets, period.
That's your motion. Is there a second?
Or arrow. And we now have arrow firearms.
Councilmember Finch, do you want to amend the amendment, or do you?
Yes, I'd like to add to his amendment, or arrows, because we now have CO2 powered firearms that has a trigger and a rifle stock that shoots arrows.
Okay.
Okay.
Councilmember Wells.
I would like to remove my motion and ask Mr. Finch, because he is a professional in the industry, to make a better detailed descriptive motion, because I believe he's more capable than I am.
Is that agreeable to the second? Who seconded it?
No one.
No one has seconded it yet, anyway. Okay, so, okay, do you have a motion?
My motion would be what Mr. Wells said, but to add discharging any type of projectile to include an arrow.
Okay. So, Madam Clerk, did you get the first part of the original motion you could read to us?
Yes, it was including a pistol, revolver, rifle, or shotgun that can discharge a bullet or pellets. And Mr. Finch, I believe, is adding, or any projectile including arrows.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion on that. Vice Mayor Olasenga.
Can I just inquire to our lawyer why, or I mean our city attorney, as to why it was written this way? I mean, is this standard, or is this boilerplate, or is this the reason why this is written like this? If I can ask the city attorney.
My recollection is this was supplied by Chief Nickel. So there are sections of your code that regulate or prohibit the discharge of firearms in the sea. And so the idea is to say, well, what are you actually prohibiting? For example, the arrow would be a great example, right? That code section that says you can't discharge a firearm except in, wherever it is, certain permitted areas, if you have a shooting range or something like that. How does that deal with bow and arrows? So, well, people would go to the definition and they go, oh, it's not there, so I can, shoot my bow and arrow. But now I learn that there's something that will shoot an arrow, that has, so it's not a firearm, So that's the kind of the intent here, is to specify what it is that you're regulating in other sections of the code.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Finch.
On the way to defining it, I'd like to remove the part about the arrow, because we have a lot of archers in town, and I would like to remove that.
Okay.
Because it is legal to, under Alaska Fish and Game law, to archery hunt city limits.
Okay.
So remove that, please.
If that's okay with the second. Yeah. Okay.
It belongs to the body now, not just the second.
Okay.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Do you want to remove or any projectile including arrow?
Yeah, remove all that.
Okay, so it's
back to Wells.
Okay, back kind of to the original. Any further discussion on that? Okay, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to vote on the amendment.
Okay, voting on the amendment to the firearm definition. DeMoss?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
Okay, did you have another one? Councilmember Wells.
It's more of a question. So on page 213, under 9.05.12, or sorry, 9.05.130A, underscore A, we crossed out the B, it says, nothing in this chapter shall be construed to prohibit the killing of a dog or other domestic animal where such destruction is necessary for the protection of life and limb or for the purpose of preventing further attack. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is I've recently had an issue where a person has pulled a knife on my dog walking down the street while my dog's on my property, and I want to know, is this saying that person has the right to then, for whatever reason, if someone's dog's barking at them, hasn't bitten them, hasn't hurt them, do they still have the right to kill the dog?
This is language that's in your existing code. No, you put phrases in here because in the situation or example that you're providing, so that a citizen wouldn't come and say, well, because of this code section, it's illegal to, kill a dog, period. So that's kind of why it's in here, is so that people don't seize on this to say, oh, the city is trying to prohibit the killing of a dog. Now, there'll be other laws that govern the situation you're describing, such as trespass and, destruction of someone else's property and things like that. The operative language in the very last phrase here is where such destruction is necessary for protection of life and limb or preventing a further attack. So basically, it comes down to defense of person, an ADF&G standard, so to speak, that gets used when people shoot bears. But it's not for property, right? The way this is worded, it's life or limb or preventing a further attack. So that could be an attack on another person's dog, right? So that's kind of why it's there. It's been there for quite a while. We didn't think there was a need to change it.
Councilmember Wells.
So, I just wanted to thank the city attorney for clarifying that. That was one of the things that I read, and so I appreciate you clarifying that for me.
Sure.
Okay. Other things before we get into the list of things to discuss? Okay, so we have our little list here. Page 292, resolve vicious dog. And what do you mean by that, Mr. Attorney? I guess I have to, it says resolve vicious dog.
Yeah, so I believe this should be page 293 on your packet.
It said 292. Okay.
Yeah, I think what's been included in the packet is annotations.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to step back and kind of get into the process. So this project, I kind of inherited it when I became the city attorney, and we decided to break it down title by title. This particular animal control, and I really, or regulation of animals, is typically a very hot topic within a municipality. And there was input from the police chief, who has a significant role to play in dealing with animals in this town. And you look at things that maybe need updating or things like that. Then you prepare something and you send it out, and people comment, other departments in the city and stuff. So this particular comment that's highlighted in, I don't even know how to describe what that color is, but what is it? Attempted to bite. That was language that was suggested by someone else in this whole process. And so, and it was added in here, and I just noticed that you're defining a vicious dog as a dog that has attempted to bite an animal. And my thought was we really might want to have this apply to humans too. If you want to make attempt to bite the triggering component of a vicious dog, which a lot of towns don't want, right? Maybe you've heard about the one free bite, standard. Well, it comes because ordinances say a vicious dog is a dog that's bitten another dog or a person or something like that. It doesn't automatically, the dog that lunges at you doesn't get categorized or defined as a vicious dog, even though they might have been attempting, to bite you. It's just, it's sort of a policy decision on, how strict do you want to make your definition of vicious dogs? And believe me, I've had a few situations where eyewitnesses interpret what a dog has or has not done completely differently because one felt they were under attack and the other one was the owner of the dog, right? So this is actually a fairly significant issue, I think. Not that you have a lot of dog bites in Seward, but eventually you will have one.
Okay, so as I see it, we'd need a motion to add or person. But Councilmember DeMoss, did you?
I guess my initial thoughts would be to stick with what is the state law on it. And you're saying, according to this, state law does not include animal bites. City is allowed to be stricter than state law, but this means animal bite citations will not be brought under state law.
Right, under state law, a dog that attempts to bite another animal is not defined as a vicious dog.
Councilmember Wells.
I would like to make a motion to completely remove attempt to bite as any type of definition of a vicious dog, because any dog that barks at somebody could be considered to be attempting to bite depending on how close you are to that person. The dog's not vicious until it makes contact, in my opinion.
Okay, is there a second? That's a motion.
Madam Mayor, sorry for the confusion, but on page 212 is the current draft of the ordinance that's on the floor, and page 292, I should have been more clear, is the language for consideration. So currently, it just would read any dog which has bitten a person or which has bitten an animal without provocation.
Oh.
That is what's on the
So
floor
that's already
already.
been, this was just a working document. Councilmember Wells.
Thank you, to our city clerk. So I'm on page 212, you said?
Yeah.
And the current definition is right there, yeah, a vicious dog, any dog which has bitten a person or which has bitten an animal without provocation.
Correct. That is currently on the floor.
Right.
If you're
This was
satisfied,
confusing.
no more motion is necessary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, are we
All right.
good with that?
We got it, yeah, that's
This is
correct.
clear. Okay, well, that's one. Okay,
forgot
now,
about that
we're moving
sequence.
along to page 216. This would be 9.05.212A. And the question is, 216. Yes, Councilmember Wells.
I'm sorry, I was ready to
Oh.
pull forward, however, it was brought to my attention, how do you define provocation? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I got dogs.
I just lost my page.
Page 212.
Yeah,
That's not easy. It says without provocation. And so people have different opinions on it.
Councilmember DeMoss.
I would like to ask our chief of police, because you're the one that would probably have to make that decision, right?
Myself or the animal control officer or one of the other officers.
For us, I can say that when it comes to provocation, we're gonna collect the facts of what's going on and then try to make a common sense determination. So, could provocation be kicking at the animal or something like that? Absolutely, but in the case of someone walking by, that's not provocation, so I guess where I'm at with this is if you would like to try to put a definition on that because it, you may feel that it adds clarity or something like that, we certainly can try to do that. I don't have a ready-to-go definition, so it may take some discussion.
Let me get Councilmember DeMoss.
Thank you. Just one more question. This just kind of came to the top of my head. I've never really had an experience where I've had to deal with dog biting another dog or a person, but I have had an experience where a dog would eat the neighbor's chickens, who maybe were those neighbors' pets, or who knows.
Sure.
And the neighbors then shot the dog. So then, is that something that would be legal?
So, yes. And so what we're dealing with there is a couple different things. Number one, that you most likely have a animal that came onto someone's property. So it's not under that owner's control at that point, and it's destroying their property. And, you know, the state allows for the defense of your life or property. And so in this particular case, these chickens have monetary value. They potentially produce food for you. That's your property. And so yes, you can defend it.
Vice Mayor Osenga, you had your hand.
Yeah, I did, and I don't know how to, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. I'm just trying to figure out if we really want to try to, I mean, if we add definitions of provocation, are we not limiting it to whatever we state? I mean, if you say provocation, that's up to, and I understand it's up to interpretation of people that, I mean, because obviously the person that is thinking they're being attacked and the person who's thinking their dog is not attacking, those are, so if you try to define it too much, we're getting into really weird area, I think, and I think provocation is kind of a, I mean, I kind of understood it as just simply what it was.
Councilmember Wells, and then I'll...
Yep. Thank you, Chief Nichols, and I agree with your, the officer, whatever division they're in, when they come out, they're the third party. They're going to be able to make the clearest call on what was provocation and what wasn't, and so I can respect that and accept that.
Councilmember Finch.
I was just going to say positive. That would just be considered negative interaction with the animal, yelling, screaming, throwing, coming on property.
Okay. So are we ready to move to the next? Okay, so the next involves on page, well, the question is, would cat be included in 9.05.212 licensing? And then also license fees. At this point, we just are requiring licensing of dogs. And somehow cat got inserted here. And so how does council feel about licensing cats? Vice Mayor Osenga.
I would just really want to know what other municipalities are doing with their cat population. I mean, is this something that's widespread, or is this something?
I'd say it's kind of a 50-50 deal. And it, I'm not, in smaller communities, I would say it's less common. And I don't know, I mean, this was not my idea, I'll tell you, but, it showed up in it, and so somebody within the city thought it was something that should be considered. And there could be a reason. I mean, if you've got a stray cat issue in this town, then requiring licenses could make sense,
Well, Madam City Manager.
Thank you. The notation said it was the manager, but it was not the manager. Perhaps it could, because it has been in process for quite a while, a former manager, but it was not this manager.
In August.
I didn't.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion. And I'd like to amend, because it does include cat now. I guess, am I amending to remove any reference to licensing cats? So anytime it says or cat in either of those, I would like to remove that. And if I have a second, I'll speak to that. Okay. So we've moved and seconded. The enforcement issue comes to mind. I mean, I have a cat that never leaves the house, and I would be in violation, or I'd have to go get a license to keep in the house for my cat. And I don't mind spending $5 a year for a cat, but, it's mostly the enforcement. So Anyway, that's my motion. Is there any other discussion? Okay, and Madam Clerk, we're ready to vote on that.
Okay, so the motion to amend is to remove cat from licensing and license fees?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Voting on that amendment, Finch,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
DeMoss,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
and Mayor McClure.
Yes.
That amendment is approved, your remaining motion is passed.
Okay, and we just have a couple more. If you look on page 305, as you can see, that says...
225.
Huh? 225. Oh, the attorney page, and that's why it's so confusing. I'm now realizing why I'm so confused. On page 225, because we have two things here, it's suggested for 9.10.040, we answer attorney's questions. So on page 225, that probably doesn't have the attorney's questions, or does it?
It does.
It does.
Actually, it does.
It does. Yay, okay, so the question is, has this been done historically? But what it is, shall I read what it says? I'll read what it says. Continuity of government stand by council members, and I can give you an answer to this, to provide for the continuance of legislative and executive departments of the city in the case of a disaster. The city council shall appoint 7 standby council members who shall assume their positions in alphabetical order and who shall have the qualifications, tenures, duties, and powers specified in Chapter 3 of the Home Rule Charter of the city. That must have been put in a long, long time ago, but the suggestion from our attorney is if it's being ignored, it should be deleted from code. And I would make the motion right now, let's delete this from code. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? I can't imagine that they used to do this.
I just assumed this came in right after the earthquake, and it got put in.
Maybe, but to find 7, anyway, I think we have a emergency, what do we call it, group. We have a plan, we have a procedure, and I think that would be the last thing on my mind is to have calling up the 7, anyway. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Are we ready to vote on that? Okay, Madam Clerk.
Okay, voting on the motion to strike section 9.10.040. Finch,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
DeMoss,
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
That motion is approved.
Okay, we're getting there. Page 261. There's a couple questions. And there is a question, I can't read the...
Yeah, sorry. The blue part says.
Yeah, the fire chief has a question for Brooks. Can we use email as a form of communication? And this would be reporting fire hazards. Councilmember Wells.
Yep. I think that it has to do with when they do a fire inspection, instead of having to giving you a written piece of paper every time, when they've now got the pads, they ask you for your email address, I get it in email before, and then they gotta turn around and hand me a piece of paper. So I think that the chief is just trying to state that I can just email it to you and save the paper.
Yes, and Mr.
So it's, in this day and age, it's well accepted, it would be legal, it's not, there's no technical requirement that you can't give notice by email.
So-
Obviously, if somebody doesn't have email, you would have to do it a different way.
Okay, so you're saying we could email? Yes. Vice Mayor Osenga.
How would it be verified that they received the email or that they received this notice then? Just out of curiosity. If you're giving them a written part of it, or a written copy of it, then there might be a way to acknowledge that, the receipt of that. I'm just trying to
Well, I
create
think most email software has some function where you can require the person to acknowledge receipt of the email. I don't know what happens if they refuse to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But there is a function which you could incorporate it as a standard practice.
Right.
That is how you would send the email.
Councilmember West.
Yeah, we could make it, or request the fire chief make it, when you send that email, you can put in there to notify you if it's been opened or not. So if it's never opened, then we should probably mail it.
Yeah, come on up if you want.
Currently,
This is the fire chief speaking.
Currently, the report management system that we're using, ESO, you receive the emails from, it comes from ESO. If you notice down at the top bar, I don't have an option right now, I'm sure it's in the works, but I don't have an option to require a receipt for that. And typically, our fire inspector typically just says, hey, you should be getting it in just a second. Almost everybody has a smartphone now. Usually by the time we hit send, they go ding on your phone, there's your email. But we always say, hey, if you don't get it within an hour, call us and I'll bring it over to your house or to your business, or, you know, if they want it, we'll give it to them any way they want it. So
Okay.
just hesitate on requiring the receipt right now because I don't have the functionality.
So does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so then the next one was fire hazards, right below that. And there's a question about issuing a violation citation, and the fire chief's question was curious about the wording. How would we go about issuing a violation citation? Would the police department do this? And I don't know who can answer that.
So this kind of brings up a larger issue that's part of this project, but it hasn't been fully completed. We're kind of waiting to update all the code sections and then go back into Title I. There's a process for minor violations, which I envision could be used in connection with this section. A minor violation, the authorized person can basically, it's like writing a traffic ticket. So you would have a uniform citation pad similar to what law enforcement uses today. And it basically says you're in violation. The council will have established what the fine is. And like a traffic ticket, the person can either just mail in the fine, or they can decide that they're going to show up in court and, defend against it, claim that they weren't in violation. Now, we're going to have a period where that Title I hasn't been updated. So in this situation, after this ordinance is adopted, the violation citation is supposed to be issued by the fire chief himself. And so it would be done more as a civil matter than as a minor offense type violation with a civil penalty, which in our code now would be a general penalty, which I think is up to $300 per violation. But it's not a fixed, there's some discretion as to how much the penalty would be. So the enforcement after this is adopted would be by the fire chief using the general penalty that is now today in Title I of your code. And it would be a civil matter, but my long-term goal would be to include this along with a whole list of other items that could be issued more like a traffic ticket.
Okay, does that answer your question? Okay, so the very last thing, and then we can bring it back, is on page 272 at the top, and this will generate a bit of discussion, I think. It reads, trailers, campers, boats, and other mobile equipment stored for unreasonable periods of time in unsheltered front yard areas, 30 days being prima facie evidence of an unreasonable period. And what this is going back to things that you can't do, right? Violations. enumerated. The following acts and conditions shall constitute a public nuisance, and this was listed in our code as a public nuisance. And the attorney's question is this requirement ignored? And that's probably a yes. I believe I know that it is. Councilmember Wells.
I would almost think that this was probably related to people living in their RV, having somebody live in an RV on their property, back, housing shortage type of stuff, which we already have a code for that. I can't imagine that my drift boat, cargo trailer, utility trailer, just because I haven't built a cover for it.
You don't think that's unsightly?
Well,
just kidding.
looks like assets to me, but
I know. So if this requirement, as many, is being ignored, do we leave it in and just suggest it be ignored forever, or are we?
Well, anytime you identify something that you feel is a public nuisance, you're setting policy for the city. This is what your existing code says, so at some point, somebody thought that this was a bad thing to have in your town. But if you as a body don't really agree with that, that's kind of one of the points of updating the code, is you notice these odd things that have been, at one point in time, people thought this was a good policy, but they might not today. And so that's why I highlighted it, because it was one of those things that I go, I've driven around here, there's a fair number of boats in people's yards. Do people really object to that? And frankly, if you don't, I think you should take it out of the code. I mean, I don't like codes that have stuff in there that doesn't really reflect what you think is proper public policy.
And just to interject, this doesn't talk about people living in campers. This is covered somewhere else. Councilmember Finch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe item 16 below it actually covers that. If we could just strike 15, because it says attractive nuisance, dangerous to children, form of abandoned and broken equipment. So get rid of 15 because 16 covers it. If it's abandoned and broken, then.
So if we want to remove this, we need a motion and a second to remove.
I would make that motion to remove number 15, trailers, campers, boats, and other mobile equipment stored for unreasonable period in unsheltered front yard areas, 30 days being whatever that word is, evidence of unreasonable period.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. We can discuss this. I would hope if we remove this, it wouldn't start an uptick of a lot of junk in yards, because that's one of the things we try to avoid by these things. But I know I store airplane floats all winter in my yard for my son, so, Councilmember Wells.
I have a question for the chief. Is there anywhere else in our code that deals with what this code was probably speaking to, such as not only just broken equipment, but RVs that have fallen and they're no longer RVs anymore, or do we have something like that similar already?
So we do have code language that relates to abatement, which I'm actually glad that you asked that, because and Director Bickling can speak to this maybe better than I can, but we do have several properties in town that have essentially been abandoned. We have most typically vehicles that have sat for years, but there's instances of tents being left behind that have since collapsed, and it's just sort of this eyesore. One of the things that jumped out at me on that particular piece was the use of the language front yard areas. I don't know if we're going to try to abate things and we think that that's a good idea, then I don't know that we really need to specify front yards. I mean, why? The place looks just as bad from the back as it does from the front. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I don't know if you want to hear something maybe from Director Bickling, but this is something that we're trying to work on, and we're just starting in that process again. So but it has been done in the past.
Thank you.
Brooks?
Yeah, I think if I could direct council's attention to what's now numbered 22, that tends, I think, to cover the junk vehicle situation.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Councilmember Finch, did you have your hand up? Oh.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion is to remove item 15. Are we ready to vote? Okay, Madam Clerk.
Okay, voting on that amendment, Osenga?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
Demots?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
And Mayor McClure?
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
Okay, that was all that we were presented with. We've done some interesting work. Are there any other, we're back to the ordinance 2023-10-010. Are there any other amendments before we vote on it? Hands? Okay, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready.
Okay, voting on the enactment of ordinance 2023-010 as amended. Calhoun?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Demoss?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
That ordinance has been enacted.
Okay. Okay, we have our second public hearing. It's ordinance 2023-011. And when you're ready, Madam Clerk, could you read that?
Ordinance 2023-011 is amending Seward City Code Title 10, Public Peace, Morals, and Welfare for the City of Seward Recodification Project. This ordinance was introduced on April 24th and is coming tonight for public hearing and enactment.
Okay, I'd need a motion to enact and a second, please.
I'll move to enact ordinance 2023-011.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Administration, which side wants to? Okay, Madam Clerk, it's yours again.
This ordinance is largely was done with the police chief and the city attorney, and it's going to reinstate the fireworks section. That's the main part of it. And just cleaned up code, the code language. Some of it is redundant to what is covered in state statute or in Title I as well.
Okay, and it's on page 368 of the packet. I'll open public hearing for ordinance 2023-011. Madam Clerk?
We don't have anyone signed in.
Okay, does anyone want to speak? Come on up.
Tim McDonald, inside city limits. Just saying on the fireworks ordinance, you might make an exception for civil disobedience on the 4th of July.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. We don't have a list of amendments or anything on this one, so does anyone wish to speak on this? Okay, we might be ready to vote, Madam Clerk.
Okay, voting on the enactment of ordinance 2023-011. Barnwell?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Demoss?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
That ordinance has been enacted.
Okay. Let's move on to ordinance, public hearing on ordinance 2023-012.
Ordinance 2023-012 is amending Seward City Code Title 3 Personnel. This ordinance was introduced on April 24th, 2023, and is coming tonight for public hearing and enactment.
Okay, thank you. And this is on page 379 of the packet. Administration. Would you like to speak?
Motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just kidding. I need a motion to enact in a second, please.
I'll move to enact ordinance 2023-012.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Now, administration, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. HR Manager Nicole is here to speak to this ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. Title III contains the city's personnel codes. Due to the evolving nature of personnel requirements and ongoing need to address issues as they arise, this title is brought before the council to enact language previously confined to policies and to codify and clarify processes currently used by the city. The ordinance has been extensively reviewed by the city attorneys as well as the policies that were not previously contained in Title III. Please note that enacting the ordinance supersedes all policies not previously approved by the city council. And there are requested amendments from the city manager that were handed out.
Right. Okay, thank you. Did you want to speak to this too?
If you'd like, I can speak to the requested amendment.
Should we do this before the public hearing or after?
No, probably after.
After the public hearing? Have you do that then? Okay, so I'll open the public hearing on ordinance 2023-012. Madam City Clerk, has anyone signed up?
Yes, we have 2 signed in. The first is Adam Saylor.
Okay.
Good evening, I'm Adam Saylor. I live outside of the city limits. But I do want to say I'm a city employee, so my previous city employee said these are my opinions. I don't reflect the department I work for or anything like that. I do appreciate you guys giving the public hearings and people the opportunity to speak to these. The first one I want to speak to tonight is going to be the workers' compensation section. So if you guys, I think it's on page 40, starts on page 44. So basically, the way it reads now is the city has made the decision to follow the procedure set forth in the Alaska State Workers' Compensation Act. And it reads, all injuries must be reported to the city supervisor and human resources manager, and then after that, everything that was previous in there is struck. As an employer that we already have an issue retaining employees, I think it's not good practice to be essentially getting rid of benefits. The way that I look at in particular, the 6 weeks of leave that is allowed in there, as a city employee that currently has an open work comp case with the city, this is a tremendous benefit. And it's my understanding that some of the reasoning behind changing this is under legalities. And when this came about, I actually questioned my work comp adjuster through AMLJIA that represents the city. And they said there was in fact no illegality there. It wasn't illegal for the city to essentially provide a benefit to the employees. So I would encourage you to take a second look at this and not get rid of something that is a huge benefit to the employees. Just by the nature of living in Alaska, we have essentially workers getting injured just by the environment that we live in. And that 6 weeks essentially gives them the opportunity to either get the health care that they need or recoup after a surgery. If you choose to leave this in here and not remove it, I would also ask that you clarify what exactly that 6 weeks means. Because there's been 2 definitions, that 6 weeks means 6 weeks from the date of the injury, and then also could mean a 6-week congruent. In my case, I'm awaiting a shoulder surgery, and when I had my injury, I chose to come back to work and do what I could because I knew I was going to have to take 6 weeks off of work. And instead of essentially milking 6 weeks from the city and taking a 6-week vacation after I was injured, I would rather have that leave to use, during that time. And then if it takes longer than that, then obviously I can use my regular leave. So, sorry, what?
I'm sorry? Oh, on page, it starts on 429. Thank you. Sorry.
I'm sorry, it's 44 on the page.
Yeah, I know. I've just found it too.
Okay, and then moving on from that, the other one that I wanted to address is the sexual harassment section. It appears to me that the city is essentially making it more difficult for an employee to file a sexual harassment claim. You're basically removing the fact that who's to say what I think is inappropriate or anybody else thinks inappropriate, and adding language in there that says it has to be objectively severe and pervasive, I think it speaks for itself. There's in no way that the city should be setting policies that make it more difficult for an employee to address concerns that they have in regard to any of these kind of, any inappropriate situation, in specific to sexual harassment. That's why.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, who else is signed?
The next person signed in is Bailey Saylor.
Okay, Bailey?
Bailey Saylor, outside city limits. I am a city employee. So my first concern pertains to the revisions made to Title III. The current timeline for implementing these changes appears to be constrained, and the document's grammar and formatting issues raise concerns about its readiness for further progression. It has come to our attention that the city employees have not been informed of the recent changes, the directors have not had opportunity to review the document thoroughly, and the union has not been consulted. The changes do not align with the current union contract. My second area of concern pertains to the elimination of the 3.80 provisions for workers' compensation, which serve as indemnity pay. The 3.80 provisions for workers' compensation currently provides an employee benefit that allows them to receive compensation during 6 weeks of work comp leave without using their annual leave, continue to receive insurance, and the accrual of their retirement. Without the 3.80, due to how the Title III is written, a person receiving workers' compensation will have to use their annual leave balance. I was told the reason for this change was that indemnity pay was illegal, but that is not the case, and I have an email from AML JIA that proves my point. My third issue is the verbiage under sexual harassment. Admin has added language that sexual harassment must be objectively severe and pervasive. Who decides what is objectively severe? This is not an EEOC definition. Also, as you continue to read code language, you can see in the paragraph it contradicts itself. The fourth issue is the Title III still acts a path for directors with grievances against the city manager. It is not in the best interest of any party involved that Title III grants the city manager the sole authority to make final decisions on grievances filed against them with no recourse. This arrangement may pose a conflict of interest and potentially undermine the fairness and transparency of the grievance process. Considering that the council is the ultimate authority overseeing the city manager, it seems appropriate that this matter be brought before council for a decision. Lastly, it is important that we view our employees as our most valuable asset and treat them as such. Taking away benefits and making more unnecessary rules does not reflect that we value our employees. I also have 2 pages of grammatical errors with page numbers along with emails from AMLJA.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to this? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Councilmember DeMoss.
Oh, well, I'll just kick it off by saying I would definitely like to address the sexual harassment language. I'm wondering why objectively severe and persuasive was added. That seems like an odd description to me.
Madam City Manager.
That was added by the attorney.
So I can speak to the intent, I think, is to put in the code that to avoid situations where sexual harassment is perceived based on a single comment or made in a meeting. When you read it in context in the language that specifically precedes it, that is the reason that is in there right now. So we're trying to distinguish situations where people are reacting to, single statements.
Councilmember DeVos.
Okay, so would you say that sexual harassment that is objectively moderate Isn't that okay?
Objectively
Moderate. This says objectively severe and persuasive. So if there's sexual harassment that is moderate sexual harassment, is that okay?
I can't think of an example. So.
Well, what's
So
severe?
probably not. I guess my reaction to it is probably not.
Vice Mayor Osing.
Can I just ask one question? It says, so it's written in here and it's added, but what was, the sentence starts off, it refers to behavior that is. So was there something in there before objectively severe and pervasive was put in there? Was there something else in there before originally? I mean, is the whole sentence, because it looks like something was taken out and replaced with the objectively severe and pervasive. So I'm trying to figure out what was originally written.
Madam City Manager.
Anything that was originally written should appear in the ordinance as a deletion.
So it said, it refers to behavior that is and is not welcome and that is personally offensive, because we added those in. It refers to behavior that is, and then there's nothing there, and is not welcome, and is, or that is not welcome. Maybe that and has been added.
Let me get Councilmember Barlow.
I think just reading down further in this paragraph, this can include, but is not limited to, repeated offensive sexual flirtations, advances, or propositions, continue to repeated verbal abuse of a sexual nature. I think further clarifies it. I don't see the need for a, I think objectively severe and pervasive is personally, I just don't see the need for it. It's pretty descriptive down below.
Councilmember DeMoss, did you want to say something and then
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Finch.
Taking out the four bottom lines and just using objectively severe and pervasive, the four lines are more detailed and it shows they have more rights for a fair and equitable investigation, and they should be able to report it to any supervisor, human resource manager, city manager, or above them if they have to. Because sexual harassment should not be tolerated in the workplace at all, no matter what level.
Do we have a motion, an amendment motion, or was it just a discussion at this point? Just a discussion. Madam Clerk.
May I clarify Vice Mayor Osenga's comment? The language did not continue. It should, all the additional language is objectively severe and pervasive and was added. Okay, so it used to say it refers to behavior that is not welcome.
Okay.
Councilmember DeMoss.
Is there a EEOC definition of sexual harassment? Is that something we could use instead?
There's case law from that's been developed at the EEOC level, which is, I mean, we can look at that and give you more information on it, I guess is what I would say. You know, the law on sexual harassment gets developed, at least at the EEOC level, in the context of resolving specific cases that result in decisions. I mean, there's not a definition that's in federal law that says, that uses these words that you can pull from a federal statute.
Councilmember Barno.
I would just like to make a motion to strike objectively severe and pervasive, but keep the word can on that paragraph.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded, so discussion on that. Vice Mayor Osenga.
I might have not heard this correctly, but it would be remove objectively severe and pervasive and is.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Councilmember Tomas.
Yeah, I have a question. Is there, when I just looked up EEOC, I see that there's just general harassment as well. Do we just specify sexual harassment, or is there just a general harassment category as well that we cover in code?
No, there's not a general harassment section in your personnel code.
Do you see people changing from sexual harassment to just harassment, or is it always just sexual harassment?
Well, the law is, the phrase that you find being used is hostile work environment, which originated very, very specifically in a sexual harassment context, but sometimes is misinterpreted as my supervisor is yelling at me, therefore I have a hostile work environment, which is not really a correct, legal standard. So, in my view, there is not a body of law that says general harassment is somehow illegal, or that attempts to define, what that might be. The hostile work environment is always based on factors, whether it's sexual harassment, somebody's religion, somebody's race, things like that that are recognized as part of individual civil rights in our country. So the idea that somebody is, harassing me is not something that's been elevated to a legally, improper way to deal with an employee. It's really a management issue in how you train your supervisors to interact with their staff. And whether you want to try to put that in code, it's certainly, possible to work on something like that, but there's not an existing, well-defined body of law that we would be able to refer to as a guide. We'd be, kind of working maybe in the general HR context, but not in the legal context to come up with something like that.
Okay, anything else? Are we ready to vote? Would you read the amendment, please?
The amendment is to strike objectively severe and pervasive and is under section 375010.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Looks like we are, Madam Clerk.
Okay, voting on that amendment, Wells,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Demas,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
That amendment is approved. Your main motion is back on.
Should I go ahead and make the amendments that are suggested at this point? Get through that. Councilmember Finch.
I'm just trying to understand why the rights to a fair investigation, appropriate corrective actions, and employees shall not be retaliated against because they've made a complaint of sexual harassment. Why has that been removed? Why are those?
And where, could you tell me where that is?
Page 429, right down below section C, where we're just at with objective, severe, and persuasive. Because those used to be in there, and they've lined those out. Nowhere does it show that a staff can get a fair investigation and not be retaliated against. Those need to be, 2, 3, and 4 need to be put back in there. Page 429, middle of the page.
If I could speak to
Yes.
intent there, yeah, the intent was the last sentence of C, and then the sentence of D was taking the was replacing the existing language.
Councilmember Demas.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, so that covers number 4, but that doesn't cover number 1, 2, and 3. Is that correct?
No, it recovered, it, 1 is now the last, the equivalent of 1 is the last sentence of, right after employee complaints.
but it take,
Yes, Councilmember.
that new change takes out the city manager. It only says employee supervisor and/or human resource manager, where line 1 also stated or the city manager.
Right, and we're doing that frankly to account for the theoretical possibility that the manager could be the harasser and the supervisor. So that's why that's...
Okay, Councilmember Finch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. But if the employee supervisor or the human resource manager is, they should go to the city manager. That's what I'm saying, the city manager should be in that last line like line 1 is.
Did you want to speak to this, or?
Well, something that I would point out in this is that there's a grievance process here in the city, and eventually the city manager is going to most likely make a final ruling, or they certainly will before this claim goes to arbitration. So if we have mechanisms to kind of protect that relationship a bit, that may be helpful, just as I'm thinking about this, you know, so that the city manager is outside of this from, you know, and so they're getting it as it's been investigated and vetted by supervisors below. And so when it comes to the city manager's desk, they're taking a more objective look at it. That's my only thought there. I wanted to throw that out there.
So, did you want to make a motion, or let that go?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to have on that little line there, city manager added, and line 2 and 3 added back into that, because where's their guarantee of a fair investigation and to be treated with strictest confidentiality.
I'll second.
And it's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Madam Clerk, do you have the...
Clarifying question, as it's written, it says employee supervisor and/or the human resources manager?
And city,
You want-
and city manager.
And city, not and/or, okay. So voting on that amendment, Calhoun,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Demas,
Yes.
Bosenga,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
and Mayor McClure.
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
Okay. We have some suggested amendments. Can we do those now? Okay, so it's been requested. We're okay? Councilmember Wells.
I believe we have one more that we should address.
Well, we can do that. Okay.
That was on the sheet that we've already talked about since it was the sexual harassment, the workers' compensation. This laydown was presented, it says eliminating, it says, may be in violation of the union contract. I would like to ask our city attorney right now, 3.80 workers' compensation, by removing the current text, current code, and putting in, changing it so the city shall follow the procedures set forth in the Alaska State Workers' Compensation Act. Does that violate in any way any current employee's union contract?
Well, the way we're set up, the CBA trumps the code, contrary code provision. So, I mean, you're governed by the contract with the union.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's something in the code that is in conflict with the collective bargaining agreement, the collective bargaining agreement governs. Now, I'm not aware that whether the 6 weeks of pay is a specific term in the CBA. I could look that up here. Well, it would take me a while. I can't do it on the fly.
Councilmember
The
Wilson.
impact of this is, and maybe you're aware of how workers' compensation works, but, okay, so you go on workers' comp, you do not get 100% of your pay. The current policy of the city allows people to get 100% of their pay as opposed to whatever the percentage happens to be on workers' comp, which in turn can relate to the severity of the injury.
Councilmember Wells.
So my question was, I want to make sure, so what you're saying is that if our code does, or would be in violation of, or possibly in violation of any union contract for any of our employees, you're stating that the union contract would trump our code?
Right, the code cannot violate the contract.
Right.
If
So
there's conflict between the collective bargaining agreement and the code, the collective bargaining agreement governs.
May I finish my sentence? So by making this change, the employee is still protected underneath their union contract, correct?
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. So is that sufficient for you?
It is, thank you.
Okay, may I suggest these amendments so we can get through this? Okay, it's been requested that I amend 3.20.020A to, and you've got the handout on this, to lay down, to strike the local newspaper and it's justified by readership doesn't justify the cost. HR manager can run an ad referring to the city's website for a fraction of the cost. So I will make that motion to strike the local newspaper and, if I have a second.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? Okay, Madam Clerk?
Okay, voting on that amendment to strike local newspaper, Calhoun,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Finch.
Yes.
Demas.
Yes.
Osenga.
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
Okay, and then I'll move, this is another suggested amendment. I'll move to amend 3.30.035A to strike rating officer and insert department head. And ask for a second.
A second.
Okay, and the justification is that the discussion for an unsatisfactory evaluation should be with the department head as opposed to the rating officer. Any discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk?
Voting on that amendment to strike rating officer and insert department head, Barnwell,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Demas,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
And one final amendment, to strike the entire section 3.45.045, I'll move to strike that section. I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, and the justification is the language doesn't make sense and is not needed. I didn't say that, that's what's written here. Would anyone like me to read what we're striking? Okay, I think we're ready to vote on that then.
If you would read that,
You want,
please.
I need to
Yeah,
read it? Okay.
For the record. that would be
I wasn't sure. Okay, so what we're suggesting to strike is, whenever, in the opinion of the city manager, it is not feasible nor in the best interest of the city's service to grant leave to any employee, the employee shall not be penalized by loss of earned annual. The decision of the city manager shall govern as to the future expenditure of the leave. Yeah, I think I agree, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think I can tell you that that's definitely an error in our office because it should say annual leave. It's intended to govern a situation. You have a code provision that mandates a certain amount of leave be taken each year, and this was written to create a possible way to, kind of exempt that requirement in a certain instance.
Okay.
But we can certainly just eliminate the whole section.
Sounds good. Any discussion? Okay, we're ready to vote on that.
Okay, voting on that amendment to strike that section, Calhoun,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Demas,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
That amendment is approved.
Okay, so then that brings us back to the original ordinance. Any further amendments? Looking around. Last chance. Okay, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to vote on ordinance 2023-012.
Okay, voting on that, or the enactment of that ordinance as amended. Demas,
Yes.
Calhoun,
Yes.
Finch,
Yes.
Osenga,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
That ordinance has been enacted.
Okay, and I'm going to suggest we take a 5 or 10 minute break. 5-minute break. We'll be back at just after 9:15.
Okay.
And we'll hear ordinance 2023-013.
The way you moved, it was like, oh, you're very.
good discussions.
And we're back on the record.
Okay, I'm gonna gavel us back in. I didn't gavel us out, but it's fun to gavel. Okay. And we're back at 9:16. We have another public hearing. Ordinance 2023-013. And when you're ready, Madam Clerk, you can read that.
Ordinance 2023-013 is enacting Seward City Code, Section 3.50.040, floating holiday. This ordinance was introduced on April 24th, 2023, and is coming tonight for public hearing and enactment.
Okay, I need a motion and a second to enact, please.
I will move to enact ordinance 2023-013.
I'll second.
Okay, administration, you want to speak to it?
This is sponsored by Vice Mayor Osenga and Councilmember DeMoss.
Well, that's some speech. Okay. Do either of you want to speak to it before we open the public hearing?
I'll speak to it since John's eating a cookie.
Professionally done.
This originally started with my Easter ordinance, and that I had some employees asking about another paid holiday, and has evolved into just a floating holiday. Again, I think it's a very little thing, and we need to have bigger discussions about current wages and that kind of thing. I personally believe, but I also think that just these little things can show appreciation to employees, and I believe it's in our budget, and I think it's a good move in today's world. That's what I got.
Did you want to say anything else?
Yeah, and I'll just add that I kind of just thought that it was a good thing to have on, available for employees so that if they want to go fishing, if they want to take the time for a long weekend, maybe that's not around a holiday, family events that happen, it's just a good thing to have, I think, that they could take advantage of. So.
Okay. I will open the public hearing on ordinance 2023-013. Madam Clerk.
We do not have anyone signed in.
Okay, is there anyone out there that wishes to speak?
Sue, Mayor, I'm sorry if I am disappointing you by just not sitting still, but if you remember, Bruce Schaff outside the city limits. I did question an earlier holiday that was based on a specific event, which I did not think was appropriate. I was enthusiastic for holidays for employees as a perk, as a benefit to show goodwill and compassion and appreciation. Floating holidays are something that I'm familiar with, even in organized labor. You can often opt for the day after Thanksgiving, for instance, and take it some other time, but those are good recognized things. I'll say one other thing, and I said it earlier, you're spending a lot of time on lawyer aids.
Okay, anyone else wishing to speak on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Council, what are your thoughts? Councilmember Finch.
I think it should say on approval by your supervisor.
Oh, hold on. If you make an amendment, where would you like to say that?
50408.
It does say that.
Never disregard.
Okay. I thought it was in there. Any other discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk, we're ready to vote, I think.
Voting on the enactment of ordinance 2023-013 with 0 amendments. Osenga?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
DeMoss?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
That ordinance has been enacted.
Okay, our last ordinance for public hearing is ordinance 2023-014. When you're ready, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 2023-014 is amending Seward City Code, Chapter 2.30, Boards and Commissions. This ordinance was introduced on April 24th, 2023, and is coming tonight for public hearing and enactment.
Okay, I'd need a motion to enact and a second, please.
I'll move to enact ordinance 2023-014.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Administration?
Madam Mayor's kind of different one. It's actually from PACAP. It's not from administration and has not been changed. It is as PACAP proposal. So, yeah, it's bringing forward to you for your decision.
Okay, thank you. I'll open public hearing on ordinance 2023-014. Let me ask first if there's anyone signed in.
We don't have anyone signed in.
Does anyone want to speak? Yes. I see a hand.
This ordinance was brought to PACAP. We did spend a number of meetings on this. Again, minor changes do not basically change the intent. And if you're going to go through the entire city code, there were a few modifications, but mostly resentencing, if you will. The same wording was taken out and turned around, the preposition put after the verb or whatever. If you're going to go through the entire city code like that, all these meetings are going to last till midnight, and I don't know, you're going to wear yourself out. You about wore me out. The work's already been done. I recommend that you pass this.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak to this? All right, seeing none, close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Council, what do you think?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Vice Mayor.
I'd like just some clarification why, it says make recommendations to the city council concerning the design and coordination of projects to promote and develop transportation, trade, energy, and commerce and infrastructure. So I'm trying to figure out why infrastructure needs to be in there, if I could ask.
We could suspend the rules to ask Mr. Jaffa to come back up and answer that question. Okay.
Thank you. I missed Bruce Jaffa outside city limits, PACAP chair. I think the language specifically is in relation to the code provisions that permits or mandates or directs PACAP to look at port and commerce, not just port conditions, not just commerce, and the public welfare. The quality of life in the city of Seward is in code, and the interpretation of infrastructure has a great deal to do with quality of life.
Does that answer your question?
Kind
You want to
So, can I just, I'm
Yes,
sorry, can I just, so I'm trying to figure out, so it's an advisory board to the council. And this was it always infrastructure included in this description, or has it always just been a port and commerce thing like the harbor and is this mostly pertaining to the harbor, SMIC developments? I mean, I'm trying to figure out where port and commerce, because it's in the title, so I'm just trying to figure out why infrastructure Councilman
Sanga, it's a valid consideration. It's an important board because it has a broad mandate. As far as what's always been there, I've been there about 10 years. I'm not sure what always was, but the interpretation of what the PACAP can review has been broad. There is no other board or commission of the city, except council, that reviews the spectrum of things that we do. As far as specific things within infrastructure, for the last 4 or 5 years, we've paid pretty strong attention to the sewer lagoon, partly because one of our board members is able to monitor it daily and report upon the effects of a challenged sewer plant, which is infrastructure. The other things that we look at, for instance, the ad hoc heat loop project also looks at the potential for sidewalk heating, building heating, so it's a fairly broad mandate. As far as, if you look, I don't have the code, but maybe somebody could read it. Specifically, the mandate is broad. So it would include anything that council specifically does not include. Now, in our priorities every year, it's been included. And those go to the council at the end of the year or at some time for review and approval. Is this, what's this?
It's the ordinance.
No, this is the ordinance. I'm talking about code.
That is code.
Back picture. Okay. Powers and duties. Shall be a responsibility of, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but 2.30.325 powers and duties includes, well, we've added infrastructure specifically, but I believe there was an acceptance that was in our mandate for a long time. This is not the original language. Is it? It says develop transportation, trade, energy, commerce throughout sewer.
Let me just interject, Madam City Manager.
Just as a note, it is the original language, what's been strike through is coming out and underline's coming in. So it's the original language plus that. Does that make sense?
Madam Manager, I respect what you're saying. I remember in reading this, there is a difference, and possibly it's been corrected, but there was an earlier difference between the ordinance and what was in code. Whether the words infrastructure was specifically in code, I apologize. It has been something we've discussed.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm, if I may, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, you used the word mandate, and this is what the code was as written for the duties, powers and duties, and it's, I mean, it's being added basically to what's been written, or what was originally written, I'm assuming, since it's highlighted and underscored. And I'm just trying to, I mean, it's a broad mandate. That's what I guess I'm trying to get at. It's very broad. Infrastructure could be anything.
Councilwoman Asanga, there's something missing here. I apologize, but I cannot put my finger on it. But in the code, there is a reference to quality of life. That's not here.
Okay. Well.
So this is incomplete or inaccurate.
So, thank you. If the chair of PACAB feels this is not correct, maybe we should postpone this until it's acceptable to PACAB. I don't know that it would hurt to postpone to the next meeting. And then if it's just the same, if he's sure, then he could just bring it back. How does that, should I move? I'll move to postpone this ordinance 2023-014 to the May 22nd meeting.
1 second.
And I guess we would have to have a public hearing again on it, but.
Yes, we would.
And then you could make sure that this is what you want, and we'll just take care of it then.
This is what we want.
Oh. Well, okay, Madam, we're discussing my amendment, so, yeah, well, hold on just a second.
Would it
Madam
be
City Manager.
acceptable if we take a brief at ease so we can
Yes.
confirm that the
would be-
adopted code language
Okay.
matches the ordinance? We'll
Okay.
just confirm it real quick and then go from there.
Okay, I'll keep my amendment on the floor, but we'll take a very brief at ease then. And they're gonna check on that.
Three,
and
it's right
As soon as
there.
we're ready, just
It's right here.
hang loose.
This is what Bruce.
Okay. Good night.
How do you think I had 3?
Bruce, it's number 3. Come here.
Number 3.
Well, this is what you were talking about. Number 3 says improving the quality of life.
Yeah.
No. So that's in there. That's what you're talking about.
Okay, yes.
We're still at our brief at ease.
Madam Mayor,
Hold
I did
on.
not want to be the one to extend this meeting.
Okay, hold on. Hey, we're having fun here.
Oh, but look.
I'm waiting, we're at ease so they can make sure.
See this? It's fine, right? Yeah. See, because this is just duplicated on the lens.
Okay, we're out of our brief at ease. Madam City Manager.
So under 325, what we found is the ordinance is correct online in the code. It looks like perhaps a recodification company duplicated 2, so there's 2 2s. But in the ordinance, it reflects 1 2.
Yes, it does. So.
Which is correct.
The numbering is wrong?
Yeah. But that's
online. They stuck them into a paragraph, I see. That's, yeah.
But the code language, Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
The code language itself in the ordinance is correct. It's just a codification, a company issue. But
Okay.
this is correct. as
Okay.
Mr. Jones said.
Assistant City Manager Sewell.
And to Chair Jaffa's point, 230325 A3 says provide input to the City Council on policy and procedural matters involving the establishment and continuance of commercial activity, improving the quality of life and protecting the public's best interests. I think that's where Chair Jaffa was saying that's as expansive as of a mandate as you're going to get, is anything that affects the quality of life of Seward residents.
Okay. Thank you. So I will withdraw my amendment if that's okay with my second, whoever that was. Okay. So we have before us ordinance 2023-014. Any further discussion? Councilmember DeMoss.
I just want to say thank you so much to the chair, Bruce Jaffa. I really appreciate all of the work and the broadness of the topics that PACAP takes on. And also I want to remind council that I feel like we used to give more things to PACAP. Like we would say, man, we talk about this a lot and we should just give it to PACAB to hash out a little bit. And I think we need to remember to do that because they are an advisory board to us. So I think we need to take advantage of a great group of people that want to work on stuff for us. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to vote.
Okay, voting on the enactment of ordinance 2023-014 with no amendments. Wells?
Yes.
DeMoss?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Osenga?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
That ordinance has been enacted.
Okay, we have one last public hearing. It's a resolution. Resolution 2023-050. When you're ready, Madam Clerk.
Resolution 2023-050 is amending the Harmon Developer Reimbursement Program application from the reimbursement method to the assessment district method and appropriating $161,565, the other half of the estimated cost of improvements.
Okay, I would need a motion to approve and a second for this.
I move for the approval of resolution 2023-050.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Administration.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Pickling is here to speak to this.
Okey doke.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. As you remember, on September 12th, the City Council approved Resolution 2022-102 approving the developer reimbursement application for the Harmon subdivision. At that time, he applied for the reimbursement method where he was going to submit his receipts to us and then we would pay him back for half, reimburse for half. On March 14th, he requested to change that from the reimbursement method to the assessment district method. This was supposed to come to you guys before, but it did get bumped down a few times, a few meetings. And so so that's why we're bringing this forward to you today.
Okay, thank you. And anything you want to add? Okay, I'll open the public hearing for Resolution 2023-050. Madam Clerk, is anyone signed in?
No one is signed in.
Is there anyone out there wanting to speak? Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Council, any? Yes.
Just a
Councilmember
couple
Calhoun.
of, Madam Mayor, thank you. A couple of questions. So this, we had already approved with the different method. We're bringing this back now. So the $161,565 expenditure has nothing to do with the fact that we have no DRP money, right? Because now we're going to pay for it first and then reimburse. So it's kind of like, since we were going to reimburse half of the cost originally, it sort of cancels each other out. Is that what I understand?
Someone from administration will, they're trying to decide at this point who's going to answer this.
Yeah, so it is kind of confusing. What it does is it allocates the other portions so that we can pay for that money up front. But when we were going through the submissions, this action basically, when you got that in the queue, this is basically what closed the DRP program temporarily, because this is what we hit the ceiling on the amount of funds. And so, does that make sense? Because we kind of have all these funds queued up and like, no, what's going to spend? And so when he made this request, that kind of depleted our funds until more funds become available. But yeah, this does basically make it so that we can pay for that upfront. But it doesn't overall change the city's long-term expenditure on this project.
Councilmember Wells.
Does administration feel it's appropriate that the application was approved one way, although it was the company's option on how they wanted to make the payment, whether it was up front or on the back end? Is it appropriate to be making the change now, and will we be setting up for the other developers to be able to make a change midstream in the future?
I think he hadn't expended any money yet. He didn't have anything going. Like, I think that between when he got this approved on September 12th, things change. Lots of projects are going on. Like, you know, there's any type of reason why a developer could do that. I think it's just fine for developers to change. Although I think most developers will apply for the assessment district where the city pays it up front. And so I would say that I would be surprised if any other come in that direction, but I don't know if it's going to set precedent. This is the only person that we've had apply for that in the beginning. Does that answer your question?
Councilmember Calhoun.
One more question, and this is going to be more of a finance question, I think. On page 447, fund balance information. So this, the affected fund is the water, sewer, ARPA funds, and DRP. And it says the available unrestricted cash balance in that fund is $2,023,000. But we don't have any DRP money. Is that?
Madam City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to take a shot at it, and if I'm incorrect, the Deputy Finance Director will correct it. When you're speaking of the cash is actually there because not all of the funds have been expended by the developer. For instance, we are paying the invoices as they come in, which will take down the cash balance. So the cash balance is there, however, it appears to me to be restricted up above. Perhaps the Deputy Finance Director could expand on that.
The cash balance doesn't mean that it's not appropriated. It's what we're trying to say. It's not expenditure yet.
Correct, the invoices have not been paid yet.
Okay, Councilmember Calhoun.
Understand, but the fact that we have already authorized all of that money for that project this $2 million shouldn't appear down here telling us that we still have $2 million of unrestricted cash balance, because it is restricted, because we've already obligated it to the DRP program.
Madam City Manager.
I agree. That will be corrected in the future on the legislation.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to vote.
Voting on the approval of Resolution 2023-050. Bosenga?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
Demas?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Okay, and that's the end of the public hearings. And now we're down to number 10, new business, where I've moved the items that were taken off of consent. So we have before us Resolution 2023-052. Madam Clerk?
Resolution 2023-052 is authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Electric Power Constructors Incorporated in a not-to-exceed amount of $3,595,106.62 to replace aging equipment and upgrade the voltage capacity to 115 kilovolts at the Fort Raymond Substation.
Okay, I need a motion to approve and a second, please.
I'll move to approve resolution 2023-052.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Administration. Okay. Rob?
Just quickly, and to put it in perspective, this is a complete rebuild of our largest substation, which is Fort Raymond. There's only a few companies in Alaska that can handle this type of work, and when we did the RFP, we had one bid that came in. The actual RFP was handled by our engineering firm, and this goes back to our department's just lack of resources. So they assisted by taking lead on the RFP.
Okay. Council. Councilmember Calhoun, you removed it, so.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, yeah, one of the main reasons that I did that, obviously this has been, planned part of our infrastructure upgrading and all that. My concern when I read through it was, if you look on, there's 2 pages to look at. One is page 87, and then one is actually page 84, which was part of a resolution prior to this that was approved on consent. And if you look at page 87, it's showing that our revenue bond funding, we have restricted $3,995,271, which would cover the cost of this 3.595 million. But if you look at page 84, we have already approved expenditure of a little over $9 million from that bond. We only have $937,000 of bond money that's not restricted. Well, actually less now, less $158,450. So we're about $800,000 is what we have left in from that bond money. So if we approve this, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't, and I'm not opposed to it, that's going to have to come out of reserve revenue of the electric fund, because we do not have bond money to pay for that.
That is, can we verify that?
No, that is correct. You may recall in earlier meetings when we talked about the first 2 years of the infrastructure work, we knew that we would exceed the $10 million bond. And we've said all along that we would go probably $4 or $5 million into our reserves. Our reserves today are a little over $7 million, I believe, subject to verification. But my goal is, coming out of these projects over the first 2 years, is to leave, I'm trying to leave about $2.5 million in our reserves as we move forward. But this really shouldn't be a surprise, because we talked about this in the past. Now, to Councilmember Calhoun's point, there's still money in the bond simply because we have not had all of the commitments that we've made pass through with their invoices yet. But I couldn't tell you which one's going to come through first at this point, but as they come in, we will pay them. Once the bond is used, then we will start pulling from the reserves.
Other questions? Councilmember Calhoun?
No questions.
Or
I just,
comments?
again, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that the bond money, is pretty much gone. And so we have to be prepared if we're going to do this. And that's why I know it sounds kind of nitpicky sometimes, but I look at the back pages on these financials to see what the funds are saying and what it says we have. And it gets a little confusing for us because sometimes it says, well, we've got all this unrestricted money, but we really don't. And so I just want to make sure everybody's clear if we pass this resolution where this funding is going to have to come from. And I'm wondering, I apologize, I should have looked deeper into the resolution itself if it says it's coming out of the bond. I don't think it says that.
Designated revenue bond.
It does say that?
I think it does.
Okay, so we may have to change the language on the resolution if it's not actually going to come out of the revenue bond.
Well, and again, subject to check, we don't know which invoices are going to be coming through first. So we very well could pay this one, but then it would have affected one of the ones that we passed earlier.
Out of the revenue bond.
Correct.
That makes sense. Okay. Other comments, questions? Are we ready to vote? Okay, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to vote. Or not?
Well, Madam Mayor, I guess,
Okay.
are we going to vote and say this is coming out of the revenue bond? I don't think we can do that.
Do you want to make an amendment? Okay. Hold on one second. Madam City Manager?
Sorry, I have my hand up and up.
Oh.
Yes. If I understand correctly, what is being stated is that based on the other authorization, the balance that was explained, the funds are not available as far as appropriation-wise, not cash-wise, the cash is there, but not appropriation-wise. So this does need to be appropriated from the reserve fund.
So I guess I would like to, is it an amendment to this to have the appropriation come from the cash reserve fund? Of the,
Madam City Manager.
Thank you. Can I please request that it be stated how it would be stated? I don't think it's stated cash reserve.
Yeah,
It's not cash reserve. So the proceed of the electric bond is allocated into the electric enterprise fund, Fund 1500. Then it drags to different funds to have the reserve there. In this case, it doesn't say that. It's just saying that it's in one fund. That is where the confusion is. It's not appropriated. This is what it says, it's not appropriated. But it should be appropriated.
From reserves.
Madam City Manager, would you say that again?
Thank you. It would be from the reserves, but exact wording would be, funding is hereby appropriated for the project from the designated reserve funds?
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to.
Hold on.
So
Yes,
sorry. I'm
Madam
so
City
sorry. I just
Manager.
want to get this right. I would also add electric, designated electric reserve funds, just so there's no question.
Okay. Maker of the amendment, is that what you want?
as long as that makes it what we need to do.
Okay, and then
Absolutely.
a second?
Second.
Okay. Councilmember Finch.
Before we vote on this,
Yeah.
I have a question. Is there a contract for this, with this much money out there? Shouldn't we look at a contract, or is this like here's the money, go for it.
Typically, when you do the RFP, there's a contract. Again, this was handled by our engineering firm. I have not yet received the contract, but I will certainly reach out to them.
Okay, so.
I mean, the scope of work we provided in the RFP. So the scope of work is pretty laid out. It's really a complete rebuild of the substation.
Okay.
Right?
But before we vote on this, we should see the contract instead of just throw the money in the air and hope it lands on a contract.
Well, what does council think? Councilmember Calhoun.
How much does this hinder operations if we postpone this to our next meeting to be able to look at that?
Very much so.
Yeah.
This work is, we're moving as quickly as we can to make sure that we have all of the approvals. And this work on the substation is set to begin preliminary work in possibly late June, but definitely in early July. So we're moving as quickly as we can.
Council, are we?
Sorry, we have an amendment on the floor. I just want to remind you.
And the amendment, would you read the amendment?
The amendment
Thank you.
was to change section 2 to read,
Sorry.
funds hereby appropriated from the project, from the designated electric reserves account. I don't know how the number's going to change. Okay, that's the amendment.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're discussing the amendment. Are we ready to vote on that amendment? Okay.
Okay, voting on that
Sorry.
amendment. Demas?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Bosenga?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
And Mayor McClure?
Yes.
Thank you, that amendment is
Now we're back to the original resolution. Are we ready to vote as is? Councilmember Finch.
How long has this been in motion and we still don't have a contract from them?
Well, typically when you're doing the RFP, the contract is included in the RFP process. Now, subject to check, I would have to go back to look to see if I've received it from the engineering firm. But we provided the scope of work for the project, and that's what would be outlined in the contract. And as you can see, we have the amount listed, and we only have one bid coming for the project.
Councilmember Wells.
So, I think basically what you're saying is that they put in the RFP, if we say yes on the funds, and if and when this different contract comes through, or the final contract comes through, if it doesn't match the RFP, we tell them,
Correct.
forget it.
Correct.
So we're still secure either way.
Correct.
Does that, okay. Are we good with this? We're ready to vote.
I'm sorry, but I feel compelled to tell you that when you approve this resolution, you're approving a contract unseen. Regardless, that the bid proposal is not a binding document. And I need you to understand that.
Any further discussion? Vice Mayor Osenga.
Is there an attorney we should talk to before we try to do this?
There's one right there.
How can I help you? No, I was noticing going through your packet that the RFP, or it was called an ITB, so if you look at page, I think my pagination is off, but I think it's 98 maybe of your packet. It starts appendices. And appendix 3 says contract documents, so I'm sitting here thinking that there must have been a contract that was an appendix, and it just didn't make it into your packet. But I don't know how we would verify that at this point, and then,
Okay.
the other possibility is that the engineering firm, referenced these appendices, but then didn't include them. But that seems very unlikely, because Appendix 2 is the technical specs, and you can't bid on a project without the specs. And Appendix 1 was the bid submission form. So my feeling is there is a contract document that was an appendix part of the bidding process, and the bidder is most likely compelled to sign it. But it's not in your packets. You're not. I can't tell you what it says.
Before we move on, let me ask the clerk, is it 10:30 we have to extend?
You can go to 11.
Oh, 11, okay, thank you. Okay, that was just an interjection. Councilmember Wells.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Councilmember Finch. I wouldn't want to vote without a contract. I thought, if we have it, we have it. But I understand the importance of the timeline, and so I would be willing to have a special meeting this week so that we could review a contract or postpone it until the next council meeting.
Councilmember DeMoss.
I don't want to postpone it until the next council meeting, so if we are not ready to vote on it tonight, then I would like a special meeting this week, like tomorrow, or Thursday, 48 hours, whatever.
Okay, what's the, I guess we need a motion then
Can we vote on this?
Well, we would be moving to postpone until a special meeting at some set date, or what's your
I mean, I would like to vote on this current resolution. Just vote on it.
Oh, call for the vote at this point? Okay, we can do that.
Ready?
I guess, yeah. So we're voting on Resolution 2023-052?
Without a contract?
Apparently.
That's the motion on the floor currently. The approval of this resolution as amended. Barnwell?
Yes.
Wells?
No.
Finch?
No.
Osenga?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
DeMoss?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
That resolution has been approved.
Okay, we now have Resolution 2023,
Sorry.
okay, -054. Madam Clerk.
Resolution 2023-054 is authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Util Assist Incorporated to outsource the city's customer billing services for electric and water sewer in an amount not to exceed $138,000, including a one-time fee of $36,000 to complete on-site discovery, due diligence, and training.
Okay, I need a motion to approve and a second, please.
A motion to approve ordinance 2023.
Resolution. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Administration.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually read, because I want to make sure we cover all of the details. And so just bear with me. Since joining the city's electric department nearly 2.5 years ago, billing for electric customers has been an ongoing struggle. The billing for sewer is handled through the city's finance department. The primary reasons for these struggles have been related to, one, staffing. The inability to hire and retain a second utility desk position is an ongoing issue. Though the position is budgeted for, it has remained vacant during the majority of my time with the city. Number two, limited knowledge and experience in the utility desk position. For the past 2+ years, the city has relied primarily on a single person to handle both the electric and water sewer billing. This causes an extreme burden on that one position and does not allow for appropriate separation of duties and ongoing review, which results in potential errors and liabilities for the city. Around 2,800 accounts have not been properly maintained for several years, resulting in the city having around $2 million in receivables for 2022, some of which are most likely uncollectible. To put it simply, the workload is too much for one person, and the department has done the best they can under the circumstances. And while a replacement has recently been found for the one position, this employee is still new and learning. The city cannot continue to have only one person in charge of reading meters, managing the billing functions, and handling customer service without experiencing ongoing issues. Number 3, limitations of the utility software for net meter customers. The city's Harris software is not currently capable of handling the net meter customers automatically through its system. The city recently spent money to upgrade the software, but was not aware this was going to be an issue at the time. Since the software cannot handle the processing of these bills, the city finance department is processing the bills of around 30 net meter customers manually through Excel. This is another potential issue that can lead to errors. 2 months ago, the city was close to not being able to bill its customers because there was no one in the department with the knowledge and experience to do so. The only reason bills made it to customers was because a former employee agreed to temporarily come back to assist. She did this only as a favor, since her family obligations require her attention. Without her assistance, I'm not sure the billing for those 2 months would have gotten done. But due to her family obligations, she is only able to assist through mid-May, and she is departing this week. This will once again leave the utility desk with a single person who still faces a significant learning curve. It also places the city back in the vulnerable position of not being able to complete billing during the month of June or possibly months thereafter. It's worth noting that during the 2 months the former employee assisted with billing, the finance department scrambled to identify firms capable of managing the billing moving forward, and interviews were conducted with those firms. The selected firm not only offered the most experience and capabilities, but it also works in the Harris software platform. This is important because it means that billing can be more easily transitioned back into the city should the outsourcing relationship not work out. It's also worth noting that outsourcing the city's billing functions will reduce employee headcount by 1 utility desk position, resulting in savings of approximately $85,000 a year, and that does include benefits. This amount nearly offsets the $102,000 per year the city will pay to outsource the billing. Some in the community have voiced a concern about eliminating jobs in sewage, but truthfully, it's difficult to eliminate a position that is never filled. By outsourcing, the city will be served by a util-assist team of up to 7 people, ensuring the city is never left shorthanded. The bottom line is the city needs considerable help in the billing department. I'm sure the finance department would love nothing more than to hire people from Seward who would be committed to learning the functions of the utility desk job and then have those employees stay in the job for some adequate period of time. But that has not been the reality. At some point, when something is broken, and it remains broken, you have to seek different solutions. Billing is something that is a basic function of any utility, and the city, for many reasons that are out of its control, is failing to provide these basic functions. It's time the problem gets fixed. I hear from people in the community, and there are a number of folks that think there are easy fixes to a problem like this. But I will say again, just a few months ago, we were facing a situation of not being able to get bills out to our customers, and that's unacceptable. If we had not had a former employee come back, I don't know what we would have done. So during that 2-month time period, we scrambled to see if we could identify a firm. The one that we picked So definitely the most qualified, and probably most importantly, that they use Harris as a platform. And that way, if there are problems, we can pull it back if needed. Having the former employee come back did nothing but buy us a little time, so we could try to identify a firm. We looked to see if there were firms that had the type of experience we were looking for within Alaska. We did not find any. So then we talked to some firms in the lower 48, as well as this firm out of Canada that ended up having the most experience and worked out of the Harris platform.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything else? I do not. Okay, bring it back to council. Who removed this from the consent? It was Councilmember Calhoun. Did you want to speak to that?
I just removed it because there was a lot of comments from the community and concerns, and so I wanted us to just have a chance to really discuss this and see if it was actually is our best option.
Okay, Councilmember Fitch.
It's nice to hear that there's a former worker willing to come back for 2 months. Has the city thought about offering them to work from home?
We've offered many different options.
My other question, because money going out of the city I don't like, let alone the state or out of the country, with all the banking service software that we have access to, coordinating data collection, maintain the finance department, city's computer system manager, all the way out to a foreign country. I'm not comfortable with that, but have we checked, and I'll just say, have we checked with Chugach and HEA to see if their departments would be willing to take on it?
I did check with HEA. HEA was willing as we looked into it. Their billing employees are union, and they are not allowed to actually do the actual keyboard work and handling customer complaints. So from a union standpoint, that ruled out Homer Electric. With Chugach, I did not reach out to Chugach directly because we were in the middle of the potential sale of the utility, and based on some of the occurrences during that time frame, it did not make sense for us to have that conversation with Chugach.
Okay, other Vice Mayor Osaka.
So, could the platform actually be the problem that we're having? I mean, if we're not able to do net metering now, is it time to think about changing how the system that we're using?
Yeah, and initially you may want to address that.
They can provide us the service for what we need for the net meter. It's a customization that they can work with.
Yeah, the Harris software works fine for a great majority of our customers. It's the 30 net meter customers that we cannot get the software to work. I'm not sure what kind of upgrade is needed. I know that the finance department has contacted Harris on numerous occasions. They've had conversations. Jeremy, who was in the billing department for a long time, was working with them to try to solve the problem, and they could never get it done. So we continue to this day to handle those manually, and that's just, again, that's unacceptable. The firm that we're talking with can handle this in-house with no problem.
As a follow-up though, so I guess what I'm getting at is, if we're going to try to get on our own feet again, I mean, does that signify that in the future, we're going to have to change our platform that we're using, our software that we're using? We're going to have to, if we're going to stand on our own, that's going to require, sounds to me like it's going to require not using that Harris, I believe you called it?
Yeah, Harris software.
Harris software, yeah.
I'm going to let Sully jump in, but I will speak from my perspective. I've been here 2.5 years, and billing has been a thorn in my side the entire time I've been here. And if there is a way to either outsource it, my other option would be to bring billing inside the electric department so we can have some depth of expertise developed over time for the electric billing itself. If you're asking for just an opinion, which I don't know that you are, I would say if we can find a firm that we can outsource with and keep it outsourced as long as it's going well, we're talking about one position, one utility desk position that we haven't been able to fill. And I think as we look to the future, that is going to be an ongoing problem here in Seward, is finding people who want to take the job, people who are dedicated to learning the job, and then staying in the job. And that's what's been the problem the whole time I've been here.
Councilmember Demas.
I have a couple comments. I want to say I think one of the reasons that we have a hard time filling that position is because of all of the issues that we have in our billing system right now, and so many people getting billed inaccurately, and that person having to stand there and take that heat and not have any answers because no one knows how to do our billing. Nobody at the city knows how to do our billing. I've been saying that before I started council, and it's gotten only worse. So I have concerns about the outsourcing not being able to catch mistakes for people that might be classified incorrectly. I'm not confident that everyone is still classified correctly for how they should be, like maybe the wrong size water line or getting too many charges on their bills. How is a company that is in Canada gonna know that I am being improperly classified as a bar when I should be something else, because they don't know
And that's
who
a
I am.
responsibility that falls back on the city through annual audits of the customers and their classifications. You know, when I came into the electric department, I'm not sure if that was being done, but I know that we had a number of customers that were classified wrong on the electric side. And in doing an audit, we found that we had a dozen or so that needed to be reclassified. We committed at that point to take a look at the customer classifications annually so that we do not have that problem again. I think that's the responsibility that falls back on the city to ensure that that happens. We also, we're not eliminating the one utility desk position. We will still have the one position here in Seward, taking payments, being engaged with the customer accounts, and being the face of the billing here in town. We're losing the one position, which is the second.
Okay, Councilmember Elson.
So, one part question, one part statement. First part statement, for all the voters that voted against the sale of the utility, this is what we're gonna be doing now. This is what we're gonna be dealing with now. So, we're gonna be spending a bunch of money, we're gonna be spending a bunch of time, and so when you hear us up here struggling, just note that that was one of the reasons we should have sold this utility, in my opinion. Question, if we outsource this for now, to better aid our billing department now, could we work towards, within the next year, a new program? It's not like this has to last forever, right? But we already knew what the reason why we were selling the utility was because of all the upgrades, infrastructure upgrades, not administration, but department upgrades, all of that needs to be done. And it's gonna be a hard road, so I just want all those voters that voted no to understand that this is gonna be an uphill battle all the way. So if we have to outsource this right now, that's something that none of us wanna do, but like our director said, we have nobody to take this position. Do we want to hire somebody local? Sure we do. Where are they? Do we want to overstress and our current employees and not get our billing out? No. So if any of those voters out there that voted against the sale of this utility want this job, please come put in your application. Otherwise, I'm for outsourcing it.
Other comments? Councilmember Barnwell.
Yeah, I wondered if it's Utilicist is it used in the state of Alaska and other communities?
It's not used in Alaska that I'm aware of. Many utilities in the lower 48 use this company. They're well established. They've been around, Sylvia, do you remember, 20 years or so?
Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah. And so they are, like I say, they have a lot of big utilities that they work with. Their references are good, they're just a good company, from what we can tell. And going to Councilmember Wells' point, you know, I would caution, if you do outsource and it's going well, and you're not having any issues once it's up and running, you would seriously, as a city, have to ask yourself, do we try to bring this back inside? Knowing the issues we've had trying to hire people to man these positions, and then keeping them in those positions long enough that they could develop some expertise to do it. This is not an easy job.
Councilmember DeMoss.
I just have one quick question that I had several people ask me about. So I just want to verify, confirm, there will be someone working the desk who want to go in and pay cash for their bill. They can go talk to someone and pay cash.
That is correct.
Councilmember Finch.
So all the other electric companies or cities are using their own process, and we're having troubles with ours?
I can't speak to all of
I mean, like
that.
Matsu Valley Electric, Chugach, Homer.
Well, again, you're looking at apples and oranges. You start talking about MEA and Chugach and Homer. They're in bigger cities and towns, so their pool of potential employees, it's larger. Plus, the number of employees that they have in their building department. You know, we're trying to operate with two at the utility desk position. I can't speak to their exact numbers, but I would guess that you're probably looking at, 8 to 10 to 12 based on the size of the utility. So when you lose one person, you can usually cover long enough, correct?
Councilmember Finch.
That's why I'm asking, have we checked with MEA and Chugach to see if they'd be willing to take this contract on the door billing instead of sending our money out of town, out of state, and out of the country?
I think it would be something that we would have to have those conversations. They would have to staff appropriately to do so. That may mean that they have to add some bodies to take us home. And keep in mind, when we were back in February to March timeframe, we had no one. And we were scrambling just to bring our former employee in to buy us some time. Is it out of the question? Could it happen? Maybe, but those conversations would have to be had. And with everything we have on our plates, to try to set up meetings and have these conversations with the utilities was going to be another step that we just didn't have a lot of time to deal with.
Councilmember Wells.
Councilmember Finch, after the letter that Chugach put out during our election, would you seriously consider outsourcing our billing to them?
Not with the wrong statements ever said, but MEA or HEA, or if there's any other firms.
And again, with HEA, because of the union, their employees being union, that didn't work out. MEA, I do not know if their billing people are union or not, but that could affect their ability to do so as well.
Councilmember DeMoss.
Well, and we put out an RFP for this, correct?
For the billing source?
For the outsourcing of billing.
We did not put out an RFP, but we proactively contacted different firms so that we could have these conversations. And myself and Finance Department participated in those conversations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are we ready to vote on this? I'm seeing some nods. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Voting on the approval of resolution 2023-054. Calhoun,
Yes.
Barnwell,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
DeMoss,
Yes.
Finch,
No.
Osenga,
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Okay. And we now have resolution 2023-055.
Sorry, resolution 2023-055 is adopting the 2023 and 2024 pay plans.
Okay, I need a motion to approve in a second, please.
So I'll move for the approval of resolution 2023-055.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and this is on page 155, if you're following along. Administration.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Seward City Code 315.020B states that the city council shall by separate resolution approve the pay plan at the time the operating budget is approved. The pay plans were approved by the city council through the SPIA contract, and then it was approved again in the budget when the council adopted a 2.5% COLA and a 2.5% step increase for all employees in 2023, and then a 1.5 COLA and a 2.5% step increase for 2024. However, just to make sure that, while technically the pay plans could be considered adopted to ensure transparency and adherence to the code, the separate resolution is before you. I just want to, that was a step missed at the budget time. This is fixing that, and I have spoken to you before about the pay plan itself and the structure of the pay plan. I had hoped to change it structurally and then look at some increases. We've talked about employee retention and recruitment and retention. And my thought was that to combine, you'll see in the packet there's breaks in between. So my thought was 1 through 9, combine that so that, but set it up so it's one continuous flow between the steps. There's a break between 4 and 5 that causes it to not, from 4 to 5, look at the actual amount, there's, I believe it's 4%, from 4 to 5, not the 10% that's in between all of the steps. So at some point that was intentional, that was done intentionally. I had hoped to eliminate step 1, grade 1, and then move everyone down. That would cause increases for everyone, fix the structural issue within it. However, that is almost $500,000 a year to do, plus benefits. I did not feel it was appropriate at this time to bring that to you, and I really feel that more work needs to be done to it as well. Continue with, recruitment and longevity and work through what should be done. So what you have before you for this pay plan reflects what you've already done through SPIA and through the budget, and it adds longevity steps. So you'll notice the first page is 2023, and it is in your packet, page 160. It adds longevity. So those employees that are what we'd say maxed out at step P could receive move into longevity steps. It's always based on performance and the evaluation. So they would receive once P, then they go to 1, and they would stay there for 2 years. And then with the evaluation and performance, they could go to 2. Currently, if you're maxed out at P, you do not have any other steps. The only increase you would receive is for a COLA, should there be a COLA. So this hopefully helps some retention. That's the intent. And honestly, the budget impact is low, and so $13,000 to $15,000, and it can be absorbed in current budgets. So that I thought was something that could be implemented immediately, and then continue to work on the overall structure and really the overall pay plan, thinking about recruitment. One thing I do want to bring to your attention is that, I'm scrolling down again to the pay plan, you'll see in grades 10 through 13, those are the directors and senior managers. One that you obviously know, we're having trouble recruiting with finance director. The finance director, that is something that I do think that the council needs to, maybe at a later meeting, be brought before you to discuss that pay. Currently, they're in the 13 with everyone else, but that top, we can't recruit at it. There's already, we just can't compete with other municipalities. And so I do believe that in some mechanism, it's always tough when you're going to move one position off of a pay plan or do something, but a mechanism should be brought forward to increase the finance director. I don't have a number for you right now, that would take more research, but I do want to bring that to your attention for a future meeting, that should be brought before you. And then, the mechanism, could be a separate, maybe a contract type thing, maybe, anyway, another mechanism could be brought before you. But what you have now, it adds longevity, and then it's the separate resolution required by code.
Okay, thank you. Who took this off consent? Was that Councilmember?
No.
Who was it? Oh, Councilmember Wells, do you want to speak to it?
I took it off consent because I had received some emails questioning this, and I had asked administration to speak to it for the community. That's the reason why.
Okay, and she spoke?
She did very well.
Okay, any questions? I think we're ready to vote? Ready to vote, Madam Clerk.
Voting on the approval of Resolution 2023-055. Bosenga?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
DeMoss?
Yes.
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
That resolution is approved.
Okay, we're nearing the end. We have one last item, and it's to appoint Thomas Miller to the PACCAB board, with a term to expire either July of 2023 or July of 2026. And I would like to just start off with a motion to appoint Thomas Miller to PACCAB with a term to expire July 2026. And I'd ask for...
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. He stayed a long time. Any other discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk, we're ready on your...
Voting on that appointment. Bosenga?
Yes.
Calhoun?
Yes.
Finch?
Yes.
Barnwell?
Yes.
DeMoss?
Yes.
Wells?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
Thank you, that motion is approved.
Okay, and that is actually all the business at hand. Amazingly, so that brings us to citizens' comments, and this is your 5-minute time if you choose. And there's no sign up, so raise your hand if you'd like to. Come on up.
Jim McDonald, inside city limits. First off, I'd like to say that contract kind of bothered me, that, or the absence of the contract, was for under $100,000, I could see it, but that was a contract for $3.5 million. And not only did you not have a contract, but it wasn't put out by your department. He farmed it out to another company. It just, I don't know, I don't know him, so I'm just conjecturing, but the visual on that is not very good. It looks open to abuse, and that's a lot of coin, $3.5 million to do without looking at a contract. So that doesn't look good. I want to explain to you guys, though, what happened last year. And the attorney was talking about how, your planning and zoning rules were working and stuff. And my case is kind of unique. As far as I know, I'm the only property with the city limits line running through it, dissecting it between both borough and city areas. And so I think that that's an exception to that. I don't agree with what he said there, because it's certainly not my case. It felt last summer, and it's still ongoing because I have not submitted, it felt like a directed attack. 3 or 4 issues were raised and cut into different things, and they were systematically at the start of my season. I was hit 1 week, I got 1 issue, another week or 2, I got another one, boom, 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 for 3 months till they had them all laid out. I was hit with first 28,000 back taxes for 3 years, which I didn't know I owed, and then I didn't respond fast enough, so I was accrued fines of 10,000 a day, or 10,000 at 300 a day before I finally got that stopped. And to be fair, that's all in limbo. I've only paid 1,000 so much and done that, but nobody gave me a phone call. Nobody asked me any background or anything, and if they did, they would have known that this is a mature commercial property that I've spent 20 years cleaning up other people's messes, and I've cleaned up 90% of it, even though I was chastised for what was left. And 2 years ago, I split it, so I gave the borough 2 acres and the city about 3/4 of acres of right-of-ways. And just on the right-of-way issue, which was outside the city limits, I had your public works director out there with my neighbor chastising me as a team about why I was wrong, about we had a little dispute. He was inside the right-of-way, I was inside the right-of-way. And I asked him, I says, what does this have to do with you? What are you doing up here? This isn't even city ground, this is borough. And, but, whatever he said, it started with a B. So, it was just the way that this was handled. I wasn't given any consideration at all. I was told, do it or else. And I chose or else, and I still chose else. I will never submit to a financial gun to my head, which is what I felt happened. And, I can't get into all the anomalies, but it was very strange. Somebody had called me up and says, Tim, we've got a build up here, and I know you just split your property and got these right-of-ways a year or two ago. What are we going to do about this, And work with me a little bit, but no. And when people do that to me, I make up my mind that I'm never going to cooperate. I don't care what you do or who you are, because it's financial warfare. He declared it. He didn't ask for any truce. He still hasn't. I've never talked to the man. I wouldn't talk to him for $1 million now. So, I don't see any recourse except to throw down, with your noble attorney here. And I really don't want to do that. I'm probably the one that'll go bankrupt. But I think it's a disgusting tactic, and I wish you had as much respect for your citizens and whatnot as you do for your employees. It seems like you coddle your employees quite well. What about the people that pay for everything?
Okay, thank you, Tim. Anyone else wishing to speak? You're getting your exercise.
Last one, 10:33. First shop outside the city limits, and thank you for your attention to the detail. I started the meeting by suggesting that there were a lot of these things that probably shouldn't have taken up any of your time tonight. Maybe they should have been in work sessions to address some of the amendments and get it all straight so you could be more streamlined tonight. But you went through it. And when I first heard the votes, I would comment on a number of the issues you dealt with. You were in 100% agreement. And that's not a bad thing. It's not necessarily a good thing. But I started getting worried because you're in 100% on everything. That's not realistic. But towards the end, there were a few votes where they were split, which is encouraging. I sit on a number of boards, and I also participate in politics, and I've never found consensus where there's an issue that really needs discussion. There's always somebody that's opposed, and don't be afraid to oppose it. I remember being the first one to vote against something in a new organization that came on Mountain, Turnagain Arm. I historically was the first one to vote against everybody else. I lost, it passed, so don't be afraid to do that. I also have a tremendous respect for, I think it's Director Montgomery, I think is his title. He has done so much for the city, deserves our attention, our appreciation, and what his passionate descriptions of what the problem is absolutely accurate. I think reasonable people could probably have a different opinion on how to solve the solution or how to solve the problem. I speak against outsourcing. I don't mind Canada. I don't mind Mexico. I'm very much NAFTA. But there's no reason in my mind that a long-term position like this has to go out. I think Councilmember Wells was correct in questioning whether this could be temporary, and I think you should keep it in your mind that it's very possible. The problem is understaffing. The problem is employee attraction. You talked about the pay situation. I am all in favor of paying people more. Our company, the company I am retired from and active as a consultant, we have more work than we can handle. But we're able to attract people by giving them, number one, good pay packages, compensation, and the hope for a future. And the hope that we have in Seward is for the future. And letting people know that there's a job next year and the year after will help get a finance director, which this town sorely needs. A lot of these problems that none of you are accountants, I understand how difficult it is to go through these charts and stuff, but you're doing it. But not as well as a finance director, and you can't and shouldn't ask some of the other staff to do the job that a finance person would do. I have heard from 2 people that live within the city that could do the job but won't, because there are too many obstacles in dealing with different problems and rules and regulations. So you have to reach somebody else. But keeping a job open in the city, I think it's city's best interest. If it's got to be done temporary, I understand the problems. I'm a net meter person. We have currently the largest solar production in town. We weren't getting any credit for that. But that's okay with me. To get the city straightened out, I'll wait a little bit longer on that billing. I don't know about everybody else, I can't speak for them. But selling jobs out, I've seen it all over the country. You can see empty factories and you can think that this is not the same thing as that, but it is. There's empty factories because they sold them to China and Japan and other cheaper places. So to save $30,000 a year, not even $30,000 bucks, $26,000 bucks or so. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, come on up.
Christy Casagranda, inside city limits. Page 125 of your packet, under the electric department, says that you guys have $2,597,995 in restricted funds in your electrical department. And then it says that you have $5,860,108 of unrestricted funds in your electrical department. And then the final line says that you have $8,526,929 of unrestricted funds, which is the balance of your restricted funds and your unrestricted funds in your electric department. You guys haven't had a finance director since 2019. Your city manager made a very good point tonight. It's time that you get creative. Maybe you find a different way to scale it. Council suggested pre-2019 that we should make it an employee of council. But that was too hostile of a suggestion because people were taking that personal. Maybe it's time that you guys get creative and find a way to get a finance director. You guys voted on a contract tonight for $3.5 million without a contract. I really hope that somebody takes that back for reconsideration so that me, as a person of the public that's a ratepayer and a taxpayer, I want to see what that contract is. And if one of you get that contract, and you could please email it to me at rissy@coastalheritageproperties.com, I would like to see that contract. That's very important that we know. You've passed a contract today for $138,000 that had a contract, and that was great. But $3.5 million this evening without a contract, I don't really understand. And I can't agree with Mr. Jaffa any more than variety is good. Being a united force and having unanimous decisions and everybody saying no or everybody saying yes makes you guys look like a really strong parental front. And we as your children know that we shouldn't argue with you and we should all follow along because you guys are all on the same page and you're a force to be reckoned with. In some aspects, it makes it kind of feel like a dictatorship. You outsourced our billing tonight to Canada. And I would make a recommendation that maybe you guys should look into J1s, as the rest of Seward does. If you can't find employees for the city of Seward, maybe find employee housing for your employees. Start outsourcing to some internships from other countries. I think that it might be time to get creative, and I think that it is time to get a finance director. I feel like the city of Seward is desperate at this point after what I witnessed tonight for a finance director. We're hurting. And sometimes people lose. But you still have to keep relationships. And you still have to keep things strong. And you gotta put your pants on and say, okay, we gotta move on. And keep those relationships strong. And put the loss behind you. Pick your chin up and keep on moving forward. We own our utility, guys. It's ours. And we gotta make good choices and not choices that appear to be sabotaging it to make it go under. I know that's not what you guys intend to do. I trust every single one of you that you guys have the city's interest at heart. I truly do.
Okay, is there anyone else? All right, to bring it back to council and administration comments and responses to citizen comments. Administration.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say thank you, and I'll be watching from the other side.
Okay. I'll start over with Councilmember Finch.
Well, I want to thank the Coast Guard Auxiliary and Coast Guard for what they do. They're getting ready to head into a busy summer, that's for sure. The landslide anniversary is, I'm glad it's gone a whole year. I was very surprised at that. I want to see this DRP program pan out. So, if we have that money, let's keep forward momentum on it.
Councilmember Barnwell.
Yeah, the DIR program is really exciting. Hard to farm out our jobs out of this town, I totally agree, but we're in a pinch and we've got to think out of the box on that one. And that's it.
Okay, Councilmember Calhoun.
So many things that could be said. We'll keep it up on an upbeat note. Sometimes things happen up here and not everybody understands why. And then maybe before too long they do understand why. So some of the decisions that are made for reasons. You know, you got Mother's Day coming up, got Armed Forces Day coming up, got Combat Fishing Tournament coming up, got Memorial Day coming up. So lots of stuff happening. The Navy had a good visit here. And the Coast Guard always has good visits. You know, the Kukui is still here, probably for another month and a half. So they've been living here for a while. You know, the stuff going on with the utility is going to be hard on all of us. And one thing I will tell you, that none of us are sitting up here trying to sabotage the utility or trying to make it not work, regardless of what you know, what some people might think. You know, we really do try to make the best decisions that we feel are in the best interest of the community. We will take a look at that contract before that money is fully appropriated, and I'm pretty certain of that. So I I don't think you guys need to worry about that too much. City manager, I wish you all the success on the other side, and I'm sure you'll do fine over there. And we will relook things to get a finance director, because it is probably the one most important position that this community needs right now more than anything. And that will help a lot of the things that we see and numbers that don't seem to match up or don't indicate the, what they should. So that'll all come together, and we're gonna have to just stay together and work together and see what the future holds. I think it's gonna be bright, and it's gonna be an exciting time for all of us. So everybody just enjoy the rest of the month, and see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, Councilmember Wells.
I've said enough this evening. Thank you.
Councilmember DeVos.
Just a couple of things. I wanted to thank Katie Cornwall for coming and just kind of point out that the Sewer Prevention Coalition does so much great work here, and I'm just thankful that they're here in Seward and thankful for the work that they do. And I wanted to thank HEA for all of their time here spent in Seward, and that the way they conducted themselves, I really felt like they were a class act, regardless of the outcome. And then touching on our electric utility, we do own it, we're keeping it, and I hope that if anything, everybody learned a lot more about our utility. There's a lot to learn, it's super complicated, and we have a lot to solve if we do want to keep it. So I appreciate people that are looking at getting facts about the utility and contributing in a positive way, because we do have a lot of work to do. And my dream would be to have a successful utility that would be a little golden goose for our community, but I don't believe that can happen. I just don't. So I am disappointed with the sale, but we have it. We need to pick it up and move forward in a positive way. And I think that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, Vice Mayor Osenga.
Just say welcome to Thomas Miller to the PACAB committee, and really, again, just mention all of his assistance that he had last year with our road closure, low point slides, so thank him for that again. I will just kind of address one of the comments tonight. I'm speaking for myself, but I don't feel pressured by anybody up here to change my vote any one way or the other. What I do have is the respect and listening to the intelligence and the opinions that have come from all the other people that are up here. So I would actually, sorry, some people seem to want to make this seem like it's a dictatorship. It is not. I don't have that thought, and I don't know how everyone else feels. I think that we go through and try to do the best thing that we can do, and I listen to what everyone says. I listen to all the comments that the people make, and I make the choice of what I decide what I'm going to do after all of that. So thank you everybody for, I think this is a great group. I respect every single person that's up here, administration, and the comments even from the citizens. I respect everybody, so thank you.
Thank you. And bouncing off of that, we have a unique council here where we come in with many different opinions, and we sit up here and we talk back and forth with them. And then I believe we respect each other enough to somehow, some of us adjust our votes or our ideas based on what the others have told us and informed us. And I think that's one of the really good ways of coming to conclusions. If a person obviously feels strongly differently, they vote differently. And some, I would too if I felt that strongly on something, but if I can see the other person's side and come to a consensus. And one of the things with council is once we take a vote and it's passed, we all own that result. And I think we have a council here that really holds to that, even if they didn't vote with the majority, So I was my initial thing that I was going to say earlier was that I'm just really proud of what we went through tonight, because I personally think that all we did with these titles and all those amendments, I think that was a little overboard, and I know, I guess we had to go through all that, but, and I'm proud of everybody for putting up with it. It was a much longer meeting. I could keep talking till 11 because we've got till 11 before we have to extend. But I did want to say one other thing. I did one of the things that I most enjoy, and it's just odd, but I participated in the city cleanup on Saturday, and I got my 5 bags, and once I could get out of the house, I went out and I found 5 full bags of trash around town. It took me a little longer because I'm getting a little slower, but I did. And it was neat to see the other people who were out there doing it. There was quite a diverse group, and so I'm just proud of everybody that participated in that, and thanks for the bike rodeo too, and all the effort that went into that. We've got a lot of fun summer stuff coming up, including the Mermaid Festival pretty quick, and harbor opening, and so, which is concurrent with the Mermaid Festival. Anyway, I will not talk until 11. I'll just let you go and say thanks for a good meeting, and I'll adjourn it